everyone, Novels Wonderland here. Thank you all for the love and support you've shown me and the channel.
Welcome to Novels Wonderland, Naruto from Ninja Academy to an Early Grave, Chapter 129 to 144, Chapter 129, a max. 1878 words. Although Makoto was from Kanahagakure, and he himself was not particularly compassionate, he still hoped that Takigakure's replacement of its Jinchuriki would proceed smoothly, without any mishap that might release the giant fluttering moth. The seven tails, Komi-ai, might be the weakest among the nine-tailed beasts. It was best at invisibility and fleeing, yet to ordinary people and average shinobi, it remained a calamity on the scale of a natural disaster. With Takigakure's pitiful population and limited scale of buildings, a single-tailed beast bomb would be enough to blow the entire place sky-high on the spot. From 8 o'clock in the evening onward, the whole village was shrouded in the oppressive atmosphere formed by the leakage of tailed beast chakra. Makoto and the other two waited quietly in their room, uncertain when the rogue ninja's attack would arrive. It was not until nearly 9 that Suan led a squad of shinobi rushing over. Before he could knock, Makoto stepped out to meet him, bringing Heiate and Yuga with him. It seemed it was time for them to act. At this moment, Suan no longer cared about the embarrassment from yesterday. Upon seeing the three from Kanahagakure, he said anxiously, "Friends from Konoha, the enemy has already broken in. We need your help." "No problem. Lead the way. Follow me." Suan turned and dashed toward the southwest of the village. Midway, he added, "By the way, among the enemies there's a bearded man, around 30 years old, with a scar on his left cheek. If you run into him, please give him a chance to escape." Understood. This was likely one of Takigakure's external informants. Without such arrangements, they would not have been able to obtain intelligence on the enemy's assault. The fact that these rogue ninjas had chosen to strike precisely on the day the Jinchuriki was being replaced indicated that the village also had the enemy's informant within it, or that someone had sold the information to the black market for money. As for who it was, that was none of Makoto's concern. The shinobi world was like this. Some rogue ninjas wandering outside were not necessarily true defectors, they might instead have been deliberately cast out by their village and planted in the underground world as spies. All the major shinobi villages operated in much the same way. After all, infiltration, concealment, and espionage were the most fundamental professional skills of a shinobi. While advancing, Makoto quietly signaled to the teammates behind him, "Stay close to me, do not split up." Because while sorting through Takigakure's intelligence and personnel information last night, he had suddenly recalled that this Suan seemed to have later become a rogue ninja as well. Perhaps he did not yet have such intentions, but the fact that he would become a rogue ninja suggested that he was not as loyal to Takigakure as he appeared. It was better to be cautious in everything. The mission failing was not important, what mattered was the safety of their own people. For that reason, he even formed a fixed impression of Suan based on something that had not yet happened. Takigakure was situated within a ring of high mountains. It was nearly impossible for attackers to approach from above. Takigakure's shinobi had long since laid dense traps all around. To enter, one had to use one of the few underground passage entrances. And that was indeed the case. Suan's squad, together with Makoto and the other two, quickly descended underground through a building within the village. The underground beneath Takigakure was filled with tunnels and caves of all sizes. The waterway network was dense, and there were even many enormous root systems so large you couldn't even tell what kind of plant they belonged to. These roots twisted and tangled around each other, like Cthulhu's tentacled beard. If you didn't know the way, it was easy to get lost inside. This was a shinobi village. For routine patrols and hazard checks, Takigakure would set up light sources down there, but they would not be kind enough to put up road signs underground. When Makoto and the others had run through the underground passage to roughly the edge of the village, they heard a noisy clash of battle coming from ahead. In this kind of underground space, any sound would be amplified. The quality of rogue ninjas and wandering shinobi varied greatly, and they had little sense of secrecy. Quite a few of them even kept complaining as they fought. "Damn it, wasn't that replacement ceremony supposed to start at 10? Why is it so much earlier? If I hadn't noticed something was off ahead of time, I would have missed this chance." Using false information to mislead people, isn't that normal? Shut up. Stop yapping. Kill them fast and grab the water of the hero, that's what matters right now. The 5 great shinobi villages looked down on the water of the hero, but for shinobi who lived in the underground world, it was still highly attractive. At critical moments, it could be used to force a burst of power, and it could also be sold for a huge price on the black market. In the shinobi world, there was no shortage of rich people interested in this kind of mysterious thing. As someone roughly forced everyone's thinking into line, the fighting grew even more intense. Scream after scream echoed through the cave tunnels. When Makoto's group of 7 arrived, they saw a mass of people from both sides gathered in a huge cavern, locked in a chaotic melee that was hard to break. On Takigakir's side, only a little over 20 were still alive. The rest were lying on the ground, their life or death unknown. With a single glance, there were more than 10 corpses, the other bodies belonged to the enemy. This was probably all the strength Takigakir could gather in this direction. The rest were either holding defenses elsewhere, or all concentrated in the hidden area to protect the Jinchuriki transfer ceremony. There were far more enemies than the leader, Hizen, had estimated. Roughly speaking, there were still 50 or 60 alive. The shinobi on both sides were about the same in overall quality, but the enemy was more ruthless, and Takigakir's people were being driven back step by step. As soon as Sueyan arrived with reinforcements, he immediately joined the fight. Just like before, neither side had time to use any ninjutsu. They fought with weapons only, in a bloody close-quarters slaughter. First, most people didn't know many jutsu, and jutsu consumed chakra. Second, in a space like this underground, if someone failed to control a jutsu properly, they could collapse the cavern, risking being buried alive. Makoto and the other 2 were like the tip of a blade, quickly stabbing into the battlefield. He opened with several strokes of shadowless sword. Invisible, razor-sharp wind blades sank into the enemy's bodies, ending their lives while also saving several Takigakir shinobi. Next, his hands became like pistols, continuously firing several wind finger guns from his index fingers, pinning little red flowers onto the best-performing enemies to commend their heroic performance in this battle. Finally, in order to seal the 7 tails in case it went out of control, Makoto stopped wasting chakra. Together with Hayate and Yugo, he formed a common triangular assault formation, weaving through the enemy ranks and cutting them down. In truth, he actually preferred this kind of face-to-face combat, it made him more excited. Compared to rogue ninjas whose strength was at most around Konoha's special Jonin level, Makoto's strength was almost a complete crush. A max-level account beating up a beginner village, pure bullying. He was almost cutting down one enemy with each strike. The short blade wrapped in high-density wind attribute chakra severed both weapon and body together. As he cut his way forward, he did not even blink. Hayate and Yugo guarded his left and right, just as they had done before on the battlefield, blocking and killing enemies who attacked from the sides. The 3 of them coordinated smoothly, with astonishing efficiency. Rogue ninjas and wandering shinobi might not have much strength, but their instinct for survival was extremely sharp. Some quick-witted ones realized the 3 were too ruthless, cutting through their teammates in an instant, clearly different from the fighting style of Takigakir's shinobi, and immediately began avoiding them. As a result, a bearded middle-aged ninja suddenly appeared in front of Makoto for no apparent reason. He wore a Takigakir forehead protector, with a horizontal slash across the symbol. The man looked completely baffled. "Wait, where did you come from? Since when did Takigakir have someone this strong?" A glance at the forehead protector. Oh, a Konoha ninja. Never mind then. He did not know whether the village had explained the situation to this person. If not, he was definitely dead. Facing Makoto's extremely fast downward strike, he instinctively drew his blade to block, but the death he expected did not arrive. I actually blocked it. Could it be that I'm a master? Makoto had no time to care about this overly active inner monologue. He recognized that this was the person Sueyan had mentioned, so the short blade was not wrapped in chakra. After the other man blocked the attack, Makoto raised a leg and kicked him flying toward the back ranks of the enemy. Hurry up and get lost. Your acting is terrible, getting scared stupid so easily, not professional at all. At this moment, someone in the crowd suddenly shouted, "Bastards! They're Konoha ANBU. Makoto and the other two glanced over. Good, so it's you. Originally, the one who shouted had been hiding well within the chaotic crowd and had not yet been discovered. But with that shout, he had cleanly exposed himself. Thank you, former brother-in-arms. He was a ninja around 40 years old, wearing the same Konoha forehead protector as them, though it too had a slash carved across it. Honestly, do you rogue ninjas all have some kind of problem? Do you think wearing your former village's forehead protector raises your value out there? In any case, he was also one of the important targets of this mission. Even without the mission, if ANBU encountered a rogue ninja from their own village outside, they were obligated to capture him. The squad immediately changed direction and charged toward him. The Konoha rogue ninja knew very well how formidable his village's ANBU were. It had nothing to do with height or age. Anyone who could enter ANBU was not someone a mere civilian shunin like him could provoke. In panic, he fled back along the route he had come. But Makoto's squad killed too quickly. In the blink of an eye, they had already rushed in front of him. After cutting his weapon in two with a single strike, Makoto did not kill him. Instead, he struck with his palm, snapping the bones in the arm that held the blade. While planting a mark on him in passing, he used the same kick as before to send him flying even farther away. If you can escape my sensing range within the limited time, then consider yourself lucky. I will post some extra chapters in Patreon, you can check it out. Patreon.com/TitoViller. Chapter 130, The Mask Becomes Meaningless. 2,414 words. The frequency of clashes between ninjas was extremely high, everything happened in the blink of an eye. After being kicked flying, the Kanahagakure rogue ninja endured the sharp pain in his arm, quickly scrambled to his feet, and ran right after the Takigakure undercover agent in the distance. At the same time, his shout threw the remaining enemies into confusion. They recognized that the voice came from one of the leaders of this operation, a fellow originally from Kanahagakure. Sure enough, there was a reason he had still kept the forehead protector of one of the 5 great ninja villages even after defecting. It was like a diploma from a prestigious academy. When walking outside, it naturally placed one above one's peers. A man's name casts a shadow like a tree. When rogue ninjas and wandering ninjas like them moved about in the shinobi world, the ones they feared encountering most were the ANBU of the 5 great powers. Those people could kill you without needing any reason at all. Now, the enemies who were still alive completely lost the courage to fight and turned around to flee. At this moment, things like the hero water, or pulling off one big job to make a fortune and go home to marry a wife, none of it was more important than their own lives. Most people kept their heads clear and fled toward the passage they had come through. A few who were frightened out of their wits dashed into other caves like headless flies. Although there were many underground tunnels beneath Takigakure, there were only a few exits. The rest were dead ends. Makoto charged at the front. As usual, after sending 2 unfamiliar fellows flying, he no longer held back and chased after them, cutting them down all the way. Suein, the Jonin, quickly ordered several of his subordinates to stay behind and take care of the wounded. Then he personally led the rest of his companions to follow beside Makoto's squad and join the pursuit. At this time, the fleeing enemies, desperate to survive, activated the explosive tag array traps they had set in the tunnels, attempting to collapse the passage. Even if it could not bury the pursuers alive, it could at least delay their pursuit. But Makoto had his perception active. The instant the explosive tags were triggered, he swung his short blade repeatedly. The wind blades he unleashed precisely disabled every single explosive tag. At that moment, one of the ninjas running in front looked at the few remaining subordinates beside him and, for some reason, recalled a battle from 2 years ago. Back then, he had still been a ninja of Iwagakure. At the time, he had also been fighting Kanahagakure ninjas, and then a single platoon of more than 30 of his comrades had been harvested like leeks by an elite squad from Kanahagakure. He alone had escaped by sheer luck. After that, he never returned. In any case, there were no relatives left in the village, and having crawled back from the gates of the Pure Land, he no longer wanted to serve Iwagakure. During the time he had wandered the shinobi world, relying on the advantage of being from one of the 5 great ninja villages, he had gathered 7 or 8 fairly reliable subordinates and had lived quite comfortably. Could it be that today he would repeat the same fate? He could not tolerate losing everything again, not for those subordinates he had little attachment to, but for himself, who had once been harvested like wild grass. He could no longer flee for his life like a stray dog. He stopped running and began forming hand seals. Then he turned back and slammed both hands onto the ground. Earth release, rock lodging destruction. Die, you bastards from Kanahagakure. His subordinates were deeply moved. They had not expected their usually cold boss to stop and save them. Every one of them swore that once they got out, they would become even more loyal. Here, it was not a spacious cave chamber, but a rocky passage. The rock lodging destruction technique was the most suitable ninjutsu at this moment, enough to bury the pursuers alive. However, nothing happened. Not a single rock fell. While running, after sensing the fluctuations of the ninjutsu, Makoto thrust his left hand forward and quickly unfolded a barrier. An earth-yellow chakra shield pressed firmly against the cave, preventing it from collapsing. The current earth release, one-horn Great Wall technique, after being reinforced by Fuinjutsu, had defensive power far greater than before. After stopping the cave from collapsing, his right hand immediately slapped against the cave wall. Earth release, hardening technique. After he hardened it, the cave that would have collapsed no longer had any risk of falling apart. Creations simulated with the 5-element ninjutsu would slowly disappear after the ninjutsu ended. But this time, both sides were using chakra to alter the properties and structure of natural rock, so the effects of the ninjutsu would not disappear. When the Iwagakure rogue ninja saw that distinctive chakra shield, he seemed to realize something. He gave a self-mocking laugh. It's the shield of Kanahagakure. We're done for. That was the downside of being famous in the shinobi world. Once you used your signature ninjutsu, you would be recognized immediately, and the mask on your face would become meaningless. Just like when everyone saw a white-haired man in a mask holding a massive lightning charging at the enemy, they would instantly understand, oh, so it's Hatake Kakashi of Kanahagakure. Give me back my sense of mystery, you bastard. Fortunately, that bastard was right, they were done for. A huge half-moon-shaped wind blade swept through the passage. All of the remaining people were cut in two and collapsed to the ground, unmoving. The scene was extremely bloody. Makoto did not want it to be like this. Seeing too much of it was bad for mental health. But to prevent this fellow from using ninjutsu again and causing trouble, it was better to harvest them all with a single big move. As everyone knows, a person who is cut in half at the waist will not die immediately. The Iwagakure rogue ninja looked at Makoto as he came to his side and gave a miserable smile. I didn't expect that in the end, I'd still die at the hands of a Kanahagakure ninja. Damn it! What difference does it make? You'll die at someone's hands sooner or later. That's the shinobi world. Go on your way in peace. Makoto ended his suffering with a single slash. The few who had fled earlier were already nowhere to be seen. Suein did not care either. In any case, the village's danger had safely passed this time. After learning who the Kanahagakure Anbu in front of him was, his attitude became extremely respectful. Sir, thank you for your help. Takigakure will not fail its allies agreement. It's just a mission. Leave the rest to you. If anything comes up, send someone to find me again. Yes. The oppressive atmosphere that had hung over Takigakure had already dissipated. It seemed they had successfully transferred the Jinchuriki. This meant the previous generation's Jinchuriki had already died, and the new Jinchuriki had taken on that ominous fate. As one of the village's core secrets, even if ordinary people did not know about such matters, the ninjas guarding the Jinchuriki and those who had once been familiar with the Jinchuriki could always guess. Their gazes were the source of the discrimination the Jinchuriki suffered. Regardless of whether a tailed beast had ever rampaged in the village, no one liked living beside a ticking time bomb. Someone like Gaara, who frequently went berserk, lived year after year under the fearful and disgusted gazes of everyone. It could only be said that Tsunegakure's sealing techniques were far too weak. Now it seemed they were not even as good as Takigakure's. The fact that he and Naruto did not slaughter the entire village after growing up could only be attributed to the blessings of the Sage of Six Paths. Besides completing Takigakure's commission mission and pursuing rogue ninjas, one of Makoto's objectives this time was also to investigate the symbiotic relationship between the Jinchuriki and the tailed beast. Naturally, this was preparation for the Night of the Nine Tails. If the Nine Tails was not released when the time came, that would naturally be the best outcome for everyone. But anything could happen, and he had to prepare for the worst. It could only be said that the Kamui Dojutsu awakened after that fool Obito's descent into darkness was far too overpowered, almost impossible to guard against. But now it seemed that Takigakure had resolved the problem themselves. Makoto was not disappointed by this. He also had contingency preparations for such a situation. Now, they only had to wait for Takigakure to confirm the mission's completion, and then they could leave. However, the course of events exceeded his expectations. At around 10:30 at night, Chief Heizen, looking exhausted, came to the residence where the three of them were staying. As usual, he bowed and said, "I've already heard from Suein about what happened. Thank you for your help. Otherwise, we would probably have suffered heavy losses this time. Chief, completing missions is a ninja's duty. There's no need to be polite. If the matter has already been resolved, please fill out the receipt as soon as possible. We need to return to the village immediately to report." "Huh? So urgent? At least stay for one night." "No. We're all ninjas, efficiency comes first. That's naturally no problem. I'll have someone stamp it right away." "It's just that." Makoto asked in confusion, "Chief, is there something else?" "Well, Captain Forest Owl, could you come outside with me for a moment?" "Of course." Makoto discreetly signaled to his teammates, telling them to stay alert. After arriving outside, Chief Heizen said, "I believe you must have guessed why we requested Kanahagakure to send a sealing expert this time. So, I still need to trouble you to come with me and check the condition of the Jinchuriki." As he spoke, he took out a document. It was a confidentiality agreement. The content roughly stated that Makoto could not disclose any of the information he saw. Of course, they were willing to take this risk because they trusted the conduct of their ally, Kanahagakure. If it had been someone from any of the other 4 great ninja villages, they would never have made such a decision even if they were beaten to death. Beware of fire, beware of thieves, beware of Kumogakure and Iwagakure. It could only be said that the advantage of Kanahagakure caring about its reputation lay precisely here. When something happened, everyone was more willing to trust you. Makoto was stunned. There was such a good thing? Without hesitation, he signed with his ANBU codename and followed Chief Heizen into a secret room. The outside was heavily guarded. Inside stood 6 ninjas of considerable age, both men and women. Most importantly, there were 2 altars in the room engraved with sealing runes. On one of them lay an elderly man who had already died. It seemed he was Takigakure's previous Jinchuriki. Makoto asked, "Chief, may I take a look at him?" "Yes." The tailed beast had already been transferred, and the seal on the old ninja's abdomen had already been removed, but traces still remained that could be examined. After looking it over once, Makoto immediately understood why Takigakure had taken the risk of involving Kanahagakure. Damn it, this old ninja's sealing method was a pure 4-symbol seal, absolutely the handiwork of Kanahagakure. It turned out that back then they had not possessed the sealing capability at all. They had relied on Kanahagakure's help to get it done. The first Hokage truly had been a good man, not only selling tailed beasts, but even thoughtfully providing a complete packaging service. No wonder he was revered by everyone as the god of shinobi. Makoto then came to the altar of the new Jinchuriki. This was a little girl with blue-green hair and dark skin. She looked only about 1 or 2 years old, still very small. She must be the future 7-Tails Jinchuriki, Fu. But this skin. Takigakure, are you sure you didn't abduct someone from the land of lightning? At this moment, the little girl had already awakened and was looking at the mysterious masked ninja with her innocent orange eyes, completely unaware of the enormous change that had occurred to her. Makoto examined her seal. There were obvious traces of imitation of the 4-symbol seal. It seemed that although Takigakure had declined over the decades, they had never abandoned their research into Fuinjutsu and had produced something with roughly similar effects. But they clearly did not fully trust the imitation product created by their own people, so they had no choice but to invite a ninja from Kanahagakure to confirm it. Saving face was a small matter. If the tailed beast escaped, that would be a big problem. After confirming it, Makoto said to the others, "The seal is basically fine, but the runes at the two corresponding nodes cannot couple. That will cause spatial instability and affect the chakra link." After speaking, he placed his hand on Fu's stomach, helping to complete this imitation seal while also taking the opportunity to probe the symbiotic relationship between the Jinchuriki and the tailed beast. The 6 sealing ninjas of Takigakure did not underestimate Makoto because of his young age. Once they heard him point out the problem, they immediately committed it to memory. Chief Hizen also let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, they had invited someone from Kanahagakure to check it, otherwise it would have caused trouble in the future. Sometimes he felt helpless. The gap between small ninja villages like theirs and the 5 great ninja villages was truly despair-inducing. A single ANBU casually sent by them could overwhelm the results they had researched for decades. Unfortunately, during the incident of the Yuzushiogakure village back then, they had not even qualified to participate. They had only learned about it after the village had already been destroyed. If they had been able to obtain even a little information from the Uzumaki clan back then, they would not have had to beg others today. I will post some extra chapters in Patreon, you can check it out. Patreon.com/TitoViller. Chapter 131, Chapter 131, Makoto's Secret Experiment. 1802 words. Outside Takigakure, the leader Hizen personally came to see them off. After removing his blindfold, Makoto said, "Leader Hizen, since the matter has been resolved, we will return to Kanahagakure. Making everyone travel overnight is our failure in hospitality at Takigakure. I sincerely apologize. Once again, thank you to our allies from Kanahagakure for your help. The detailed intelligence has already been reported to Hokage-sama in the letter." Seeing Hizen bow again at a full 90 degrees, Makoto merely inclined slightly in return. "I will deliver the letter. Farewell, everyone." After a brief goodbye, Makoto's squad turned and quickly vanished before the waterfall. Watching the 3 leave with a body flicker technique no inferior to his own, Hizen could not help but sigh in admiration. Kanahagakure truly abounded with talent. Among the younger generation, the Yellow Flash had already become famous throughout the shinobi world and had ascended to the Hokage's seat. And in the next generation there was the Shield of Konoha, Higashino Makoto, and even more terrifying talent. Even his 2 teammates had displayed strength in the previous battle that Takigakure's own ninjas simply could not compare to. For a small shinobi village like theirs to rival Kanahagakure, there was truly not the slightest hope in sight. His son, the future leader Shibuki, did not think so deeply. After listening to Sueyan's report to his father, he only felt that the ninja of Kanahagakure were far stronger than anything he had ever imagined ninja could be. Moreover, they were Takigakure's allies, trustworthy, and showed none of the arrogance of a great power that rumors often spoke of. They were practically the moral example of the shinobi world. If there were difficulties in the future, one should simply go directly to Kanahagakure for help. At this point, he had already become a spiritual Kanahagakure citizen. Only Sueyan clenched his fists tightly, planting within his heart the seed of becoming strong, no matter what method it required. The moonlight was bright and did not hinder visibility. Makoto and the other 2 sped along the road. After distancing themselves from Takigakure, they stopped on the summit of a barren mountain. The night was hazy, he needed to determine their direction. No matter how bright the moonlight at night was, it still could not compare to the sunlight of the day, especially for looking into the distance. As a kunoichi, Yugo had no complaints about traveling through the night. She only had a question. "Hey, Captain, our mission isn't finished yet, right? The missing nin from Konoha escaped, didn't he?" "Right. That's why I'm searching now." "Then why did you let them escape earlier?" "I saw it, you did it on purpose, didn't you?" Thinking of Makoto's earlier action of collecting tailed beast chakra, Hay-8 guessed, maybe Captain has some other idea. Makoto's behavior was somewhat hard for him to understand, there was a bit of mystery to it. But it did not matter. Trusting him was a habit he had formed since childhood. In any case, Makoto would never do something meaningless just for amusement. This direction should be correct. Let's go. After confirming the direction, Makoto activated his perception and set off again toward the land of grass. Not long afterward, a specific reaction appeared within his perception. He stopped and said, "Put your hands on my shoulders. I'll give you a speed boost." Yugao obediently did as told. Hey-8, surprised, said, "Don't tell me you're planning to." Before he could finish, the scene abruptly changed. The three of them were suddenly standing by a river, and the two of them felt a slight dizziness. As members of the 4th Hokage's guard platoon, Minato had naturally let them experience what it felt like to pass through space with Flying Thunder God while teaching them ninjutsu. How should one put it, compared to the 4th Hokage, Makoto's Flying Thunder God did not feel very smooth. It lacked that seamless sense of close your eyes, open them, and you're already at the destination. It was like a new driver who had just gotten his license, driving a manual transmission car in a jerky, hopping way. You worry he'll stall at the next step, yet the driver himself is full of confidence and utterly fearless. Fortunately, after a period of training, Makoto had already solved the balance issue. The fact that he didn't make everyone land flat on their butts was already pretty good. For now, it could only be used for travel. Using it in combat would easily turn into a blink straight into feeding a kill. Even so, the performance alone was enough to make his two teammates envy him to death. The two of them, along with the three from Ganma's squad, were still struggling to find the opportunity to even get started. This place was a deep ravine. On both sides of the river there was only a bit of flat ground, beyond that rose towering sheer cliffs that stabbed straight into the clouds. Yugao glanced at the terrain. "This is?" Makoto prompted, "We've been here before. You should remember. Think carefully." After orienting himself, Hey-8 recognized it. "This is the border between the land of grass and the land of fire, right? We came here before on a mission." He was right. This place was called Shimotori Ravine, one stretch of the Shinzengawa River. And the Shinzengawa was a river that originated in the land of waterfalls, flowed through the land of grass, then turned east and cut across the land of fire, finally emptying into the sea at the border between the land of fire and the land of hot water. It was quite famous in the shinobi world. But an even more famous thing was a bridge over this river within the land of grass, because that bridge was called Kanabi Bridge. A pilgrimage spot for Konoha, a place of heartbreak for Iwagakure. Yugao suddenly realized. So it's here. But what are we doing here? Did the missing Nin escape here? That's right. As he spoke, Makoto pulled a kunai out of the riverbank beneath the cliff. That kunai bore his Flying Thunder God marking. This was not something he had left behind during past missions. Back then, he did not know Flying Thunder God. Someone kind had helped by planting it here for him. As for who it was, Makoto lifted his head. On the cliff face was a man-made cave hollowed out of the rock, with firelight glowing inside. Hey-8 and Yugo also recognized this cave. Back when they had pursued a gang of rogue nin and bandits causing trouble in the land of fire, they had come here. This had been that group's temporary hideout. Following the stone steps, the three entered the cave. Inside the fairly spacious cavern, three people sat by the campfire, motionless like wooden dolls. One of them was the Konoha missing nin they had been chasing. The other two were also the ones Makoto had let escape during the fight in Takigakure. At a glance, Hey-8 and Yugo understood. They had all been hit with genjutsu specifically made to run here and wait to be captured. Thanks to the power of his Nin attribute, Makoto's genjutsu was also very good, no weaker than the Uchiha clan's Sharingan. He simply rarely used it in ordinary times. That Flying Thunder God kunai was something Makoto had kept outside using genjutsu, making the Konoha missing nin leave it there. In fact, all three of them already had Flying Thunder God markings that he had placed on them. Using a kunai was unnecessary, it was simply a habit of cautiousness. Keep watch over the mission target. I'm going to do an experiment. Hey-8 replied, don't worry. He won't get away. They did not ask what kind of experiment Makoto was doing. In any case, carrying out orders was the right thing to do. Under Makoto's instructions, the two rogue ninja obediently went to the side. After taking off their shirts completely, they lay down, looking like puppets the whole time. Against high-level genjutsu, they had no resistance at all. At best, their strength only reached the level of genin from the 5 great shinobi countries, but without systematic training in resisting genjutsu breaking free? Not a chance. That was why the battles of genjutsu ninja were not exciting, yet among the 3 ninja arts, they were the most terrifying. When you do not have enough power to resist, you become a puppet to be manipulated at will. On this point, the future 4th Mizukage of Kirigakure strongly agreed. Makoto took out a sealing scroll filled with a large amount of Seven Tails chakra and spread it open on the ground. As soon as the seal was opened, the violent chakra, almost as if it had consciousness, surged out rapidly, filling the entire cliff cave. Fuinjutsu, 4-symbol seal. Makoto pressed his palm against the belly of one of the rogue ninja and used Fuinjutsu to guide all of the chakra into the rogue ninja's abdomen. The rogue ninja seemed to feel discomfort and frowned tightly, but under the influence of the genjutsu, he offered no resistance. It was common knowledge that chakra contained consciousness. So in a sense, this also counted as creating a pseudo-jinchuriki. Just like Sora, the boy from the fire temple in the original timeline. After the sealing was complete, Makoto did not remove his hand from the rogue ninja's body. Instead, he carefully sensed the changes in the other's body. It was a very wondrous process. When tailed beast chakra was sealed into a human body, it immediately began to fuse with the jinchuriki. The two became entangled, tightly connected. But because the Seven Tails' main body was still alive, the autonomous consciousness of this portion of tailed beast chakra was not strong, only primitive instinct, so the fusion with the jinchuriki was not fast either. Makoto estimated that if it were the complete Seven Tails, after being sealed it would finish forming its life connection with the jinchuriki in less than half a minute. He had verified this point from the genuine Seven Tails jinchuriki, Fu. That was to say, if the tailed beast were extracted, the jinchuriki would die immediately. Even with vitality as strong as the Uzumaki clan's, it would only let you delay a bit. Before long, you would still die. This was also why tailed beasts resented being sealed. Their lifespans were practically endless, while humans, at most, lived only 100 years. If a ninja could live past 50, they should be burning incense and thanking the Sage of Six Paths. Who in their right mind would want to share life and death with a short-lived species? Even if the tailed beast would not truly die, nobody liked the feeling of being killed. I will post some extra chapters in Patreon, you can check it out. Patreon.com/TitoViller. Chapter 132, Chapter 132, Science is Cruel. 2,159 words. Inside the cliff cave, it was unusually quiet. Only the faint crackling sounds of thick firewood burning could be heard. Heiei and Yugo watched Makoto's experiment. Although they could not understand it, they were deeply shocked, and felt that their companion was unusually mysterious today. Neither of them pitied the two rogue ninjas who had been reduced to experimental subjects. They had seen plenty of such people after completing missions. Basically none of them were good people, they deserved to die in the first place. Or rather, ninjas were not good people either, including themselves. Every one of them had blood on their hands. Ninjas only spoke of stance, ninja way, and bonds with comrades and loved ones. They were unwilling to dwell too much on distinctions between good and evil. Becoming entangled in the ideological conflict between justice and evil would one day cause one's personality to split and turn one into a lunatic. As their teacher, Komomi had warned them more than once, hold fast to one's own ninja way, protect Kanahagakure and one's companions, do not attack ordinary innocent people, and do not oppress the good. As for the rest, there was no need to examine things too closely. Many matters simply had no standard answer. At this moment, while deep in thought, Heiei suddenly recalled that the wife of the fourth Hokage was Kanahagakure's jinchuriki and would soon give birth. Combining that with Makoto's current experiment, he arrived at a deeper conjecture. After quite some time had passed, Makoto finally waited until the Seven Tails chakra had completely fused with the rogue ninja. In his perception, the two were clearly different kinds of chakra, yet they were deeply linked and bound together at the level of vitality, no different from a normal Jinchuriki. For symbol seal, release. Ah! As Makoto released the seal and let the Seven Tails chakra flow out, the rogue ninja, the pseudo-Jinchuriki, let out a painful scream. You bastard from Kanahagakure! What did you do to me? Let me go! I'm going to kill you, I will definitely kill you. The mortal threat allowed him to break through the genjutsu. He tried to struggle desperately and cursed at Makoto in front of him. However, his mind still did not seem fully clear. He had not noticed that his entire body was already under the control of cursed seals. If it had not been for the sake of observing his reactions more accurately, Makoto would not even have given him the chance to speak. His hand never left the other person's body as he carefully sensed every change in the pseudo-Jinchuriki after the tailed beast's chakra was drawn out. Then he discovered that the other person's originally intact body seemed to have been opened at some level, with vitality rapidly leaking away. An intact river dike had developed a breach. Unfortunately, human vitality was not like a river, it was not endless and would soon run dry. The sealing runes on the abdomen had already disappeared. There was no wound, but it seemed that something had been drawn away together with the tailed beast's chakra. The completeness of his life as a human had been completely destroyed. The balance between vitality and spiritual power had been broken. The two could no longer tightly connect into a single whole. A shattered mirror could not be made whole again, death was inevitable. Next came the most crucial moment. Success or failure would be decided in this single attempt. For once, Makoto formed hand seals with both hands, mobilizing the chakra within his body and guiding it to transform toward the two poles of yin nature and yang nature. This was a fuinjutsu he had developed to deal specifically with situations like this, based on his own circumstances after studying the shinobi world's top-tier sealing knowledge under Uzumaki Kushina. And it could only be performed in Sage mode. Because only in that mode was his chakra control precise enough for him to mobilize both poles of yin and yang at the same time. Sage Art, Fuinjutsu, Two-Form Seal. As he pressed his right palm onto the rogue ninja's abdomen, yin-yang attribute chakra carrying natural energy rapidly formed a complex sealing pattern. The outer layer was still a stable four symbols barrier formed from twisted runes. The inner ring was no longer in a whirlpool shape, but instead became a yin-yang symbol formed by two fish-like shapes, one dark, one light. With the completion of the two-form seal, the yin-yang balance of the rogue ninja's body was rebuilt, greatly slowing the rate at which his vitality was leaking away. It worked, but it didn't completely work. Judging by the current rate of vitality loss, what had originally been he wouldn't last even a minute became he can still keep hopping around for about 2 years. If he used ninjutsu during that time, he would die even faster. Makoto fell into thought. It seemed this method was feasible. It could effectively resolve the death crisis that occurs after a Jinchuriki has their tailed beast extracted, and it was different in concept from Chiyo's life-for-life revival technique, one's own life reincarnation. The two-form seal merely helped rebuild a person's yin-yang balance, so it did not require the caster to pay with their life. But for that very reason, it also could not revive someone who had already died. It did not fall within the category of revival techniques. Unfortunately, because his yin-yang attributes were not pure enough, the balance he constructed had loopholes. That was why the ninjutsu was not perfect and could not completely stop the loss of vitality. As for that, there was nothing he could do for now. He had never relaxed his training in controlling Chakra's yin-yang attributes, but progress was slow. For the time being, he could only strengthen the effect of the two-form seal by adjusting the precision of the runes in the outer four symbols seal. Makoto acted as soon as he thought of it. He immediately took out a blank scroll and a brush, thinking as he adjusted and rebuilt the arrangement of the runes. After quite a while, he performed the same experiment on another rogue ninja, and found that the effect really was much better. But this was also the limit of what he could achieve at present. Even if he handed it to Minato and Kushina to study, they would not be able to pick out any flaws in the completeness of the fuinjutsu. In fact, they might not even be able to understand it, because this was a fuinjutsu Makoto had developed by relying on the shinobi world's sealing arts and combining them with the knowledge from his previous life. It had already become a school of its own, just like the principles he followed when developing ninjutsu. After collecting the Seven Tails chakra, Makoto used the two of them again to conduct experiments with natural energy. The results were still not very satisfactory. If white natural energy was sealed into the human body using fuinjutsu, the result was merely sealing a mass of energy. It produced no senjutsu effect and was even less capable of meeting the requirement of long-term nourishment and strengthening of the host's body and spirit. Because of the extremely high inertness of white natural energy, it was even worse than tailed beast chakra. It simply could not be utilized by ninjas. If it was injected directly, the result was the same as in previous experiments. The white natural energy would directly decompose and assimilate the vitality of the experimental subject's soul and body, leaving them without even the qualification to go to the Pure Land, leaving behind only a purely material shell. Makoto even injected white natural energy into the two-formed seal, trying to find a breakthrough. The result was that it directly destroyed the balance of the energy structure within the seal, and then returned to the old path, killing the experimental subject. Truly a troublesome kind of energy. The pitiful two rogue ninja experimental subjects ultimately still failed to survive. They successfully lost their lives, the kind that even impure world reincarnation could not bring back. Makoto had never intended to spare them in the first place, and even less did he plan to control them to serve him and collect intelligence for him in the shinobi world. With the powerful intelligence system of Kanahagakure at his back, he had no need to take risks to develop another one. When there was a ready-made system available, insisting on building a new network from scratch would simply be a sign of a faulty brain. After throwing the two corpses outside and burning them to ashes with fire release, Makoto returned to the cliff cave. Sitting at the entrance of the cave, he looked at the moon in the sky while thinking about something. Based on the intelligence currently in his possession, the white natural energy was very likely the most primitive natural energy of this world. As for the red, cyan, purple, green, and other variant energies, they were either products of contamination by the God Tree or products formed after mixing with the wills of non-human intelligent beings such as those from the three great sage regions. This was the struggle for discourse power over the highest tier energy in this world among different races. He now seriously suspected that perhaps it was precisely because of the extreme inertness and danger of primitive natural energy that the Otsutsuki clan simply could not find any way to utilize it. In the end, they directly developed the God Tree, a biological weapon, to crudely convert it into energy that could be easily used. After this energy was spread to humanity by the Sage of Six Paths, it formed the chakra system, becoming the source of power for ninjas and completely making extraordinary power cheap, universal, and extremely easy to access. If that was the case, then the fact that he himself could utilize primitive natural energy meant that, from the very moment he first came into contact with natural energy, he had already silently joined this struggle for discourse power over strength. After tying up the mission target, Heiate and Yugao came to the cave entrance and sat down beside Makoto, enjoying the moonlight together. Although they knew that ninjas should not ask too many questions, seeing Makoto acting so mysterious and wearing a level of seriousness during the experiment they had never seen before made them, as friends, still want to show some concern. As for the missing nin? That guy had been caught in a genjutsu and was tied up like a rice dumpling. He could not stir up any trouble. Even if he woke up and broke free, so what? He could not even defeat Yugao. Heiate asked, Makoto, are you preparing for Kushina-senpai's childbirth? Yeah. Isn't that obvious? But why? Aren't the third Hokage-sama and fourth Hokage-sama already there? Heiate, we grew up together. You know me. When I do things, I always like to make thorough preparations to guard against the unexpected. It's better to be prepared. Is that so? But I still feel like you seem to know something. Yugao thinks the same. Yugao nodded. Yes. That's what I think too. I don't need to know anything. Just the title of the strongest tailed beast is enough to make me cautious. In the shinobi world, all kinds of strange things can happen. So, in order to protect my family and friends, to protect you too, isn't it normal for me to make a few more preparations? Heiate was directly moved by this strong sense of bonds and his train of thought went off track. Makoto, you really are a reliable companion. The young girl said stubbornly, don't underestimate me, Makoto. I'm very strong now too. Oh? Is that so? Then let me ask you the same question from the graduation exam. In Team 3, who can you defeat? Yugao punched Makoto. You're a jerk. Alright. Thanks for your concern. Don't think too much about it. There's still quite a bit of time before dawn. Get some rest early, we still have to hurry back to Kanahagakure tomorrow. Makoto naturally knew that they were not asking out of curiosity, but out of concern. However, no matter what, he would not tell the truth. This was called a well-intentioned lie. The shinobi world was not a place where revealing all information could solve problems. That would only make things more chaotic and uncontrollable. Even if all the information were exposed through secret means, the first thing every force would do would be to find the source of that information. An enemy who had been exposed was no longer truly frightening. The person who could possess so many secrets was the greatest security risk, standing in opposition to everyone. That was the way ninjas thought. I will post some extra chapters in Patreon, you can check it out. Patreon.com/TitoViller. Chapter 133, Don't listen to too many tragic stories. 2060 words. The next day, on the road back to Kanahagakure. While traveling, Makoto's group of 3 moved in a triangular formation, keeping the Kanahagakure rogue ninja surrounded in the middle. Apart from confiscating all his weapons and ninja tools, they did not place any restraining measures on him. His genjutsu had already been dispelled, and he was now fully conscious. However, he behaved very obediently and did not attempt to escape, as if he had already resigned himself to his fate. Earlier, after the genjutsu had been lifted, he had not wanted to accept his fate. With a fluke mentality, he tried to break through from what he thought was the weakest point only to be beaten up by Yugo. The young girl had not held back. His actions had clearly marked her as the weak point among the 3. Although that was the truth, she was still furious. I can't beat my teammates, but can I beat a bastard rogue ninja like you? This left the rogue ninja very dejected. He had never expected that, as a middle-aged senior chunin, he would not even be able to defeat a young girl. But the profession of ninja was like that, sometimes strength could not be judged by age. If they could bring back a living person, it was certainly better than bringing back a corpse. The mission requirements were the same, the 4th Hokage had instructed them to capture him alive if possible. After all, this man had once served under him on the battlefield against Iwagakure. The 4th Hokage still had some impression of him and did not wish to take his life. One could only say that they had tried to steal Takigakure's hero water, but their operation had been completely exposed by an insider. Even the identity of the Kanahagakure rogue ninja within their team had been thoroughly known by Konoha. For such a rabble, it would have been a miracle if they had succeeded. My name is Fusa, the Kanahagakure rogue ninja suddenly said. Heiate and Yugao glanced at him, then continued on their way without replying. Seeing that the man seemed to have the urge to talk, Makoto responded to him. It's written in the mission file. When I return to Konoha, will I be executed? That depends on how much Konoha intelligence you leaked outside, and whether you caused any substantial harm to Konoha. No. Not at all. I never harmed any Konoha shinobi, nor even ordinary people from the Land of Fire. That's not for you to decide. The Intelligence Interrogation Unit will decide. If what you say is true, you won't die, but you will serve time in Konoha prison. Makoto was not lying to him about this. The Fujin and Raijin brothers had killed their own comrades, and Mizuki had targeted a Jinchuriki, yet neither had been executed. For something as minor as this, execution was even less likely, even if he had leaked Konoha's intelligence. After all, he was only an ordinary civilian chunin. What important intelligence could he possibly possess? I see. Fusa did not seem to care much after hearing this. He continued, if my sons had been as strong as you, they wouldn't have died, and I wouldn't have defected. This was also one of those stories of a father and sons going to war together, the kind where they risk their lives on the battlefield while bringing their sons along. The difference was that Uchiha Itachi had only been taken to the front line by clan head Fugaku to experience war. When Makoto went to the northern front to act alongside his father, his strength had already reached the Kage level. As long as he did not court death himself, dying would be extremely difficult. That Chunin, Fusa, really had lost sons, 2 of them. And with his wife having died early, he felt there was no hope left in life, so he defected on the spot. In a brutal war, tragedies like this were common in Konoha, or in the shinobi world as a whole. Since it had not fallen on Makoto himself, he could not truly empathize, and he made no comment. So he asked directly, "Is that your reason for defecting?" "Yes. I just wanted to make a sum of money out there, then find a place where no one knew me and live an ordinary person's life." "You could do the same in Konoha. Provide bereavement compensation, and you could retire as the father of heroes." Fusa fell silent for a moment, then showed a pained expression. "I really don't want to go back to that place." It sounded similar to Tsunade's reason, but the problem was that without strength and backing, he absolutely should not imitate Tsunade, he would be declared a rogue ninja. "You don't get to decide that. You should understand, so what exactly are you trying to say?" "What I'm trying to say is, I won't do anything that harms Konoha, and I don't want to go back to that place. So why do you still have to drag me back? Why can't you let me go? My family gave Konoha 2 lives, is that not enough? Do you still need to add mine? I told you, if what you said is true, you won't die." "No, child, you don't understand. Going back, for me, it's worse than dying. Sorry. This is our mission. Shinobi were like this, if you wanted to retire, you had to apply. After retiring, if you wanted to leave Konoha and live elsewhere, you also had to apply. You could only do so after getting approval from above. That was the rule of a ninja village. Want to resist? Unless you were strong enough to ignore those rules." When they returned to Konoha, it was about midday. In fact, returning to Konoha from the border of the Land of Grass was much farther than coming back from the Eastern Front. To be able to arrive this quickly, naturally someone had used Flying Thunder God to speed things up, but that had been before Fusa's genjutsu was dispelled. Makoto would not expose in front of a rogue ninja that he could use Flying Thunder God. In fact, up to now, only a limited few people knew about it. After completing the mission and changing clothes and washing up at the ANBU base, Makoto suggested, "Come on. I'll treat you to a meal." Inside Yakiniku-Q, there were not many customers at midday. In a booth in the corner, Makoto carefully grilled the beef and looked at his 2 companions, who did not seem very interested, and asked, "What? Don't tell me you were affected by what that guy Fusa said." No matter how precocious the 2 of them were, they were still only a little over 10 years old. It was easy for them to be affected by this kind of family tragedy. Unlike Makoto, only the outer shell of him was that of a boy. Hey-8 said, "A little. That guy is truly a pitiful person. There are plenty of pitiful people like that in Konoha. Didn't Yugao-zant also die in the war against Iwagakure? And didn't the Gecko clan lose anyone in this war? That's not a reason to defect." Yugao retorted, "That's different. My younger brother Shige is still living in Konoha, so my uncle's hope hasn't disappeared. But that guy, he's already completely without hope, isn't he? So, I think that if he really didn't betray Konoha's intelligence, maybe he could be allowed to live in Konoha as an ordinary person. As long as he doesn't become a shinobi, that should be fine." "Sure. Go tell the 2 Hokage and see whether they agree. Maybe they'll adopt your suggestion." Yugao bit fiercely into a piece of grilled meat. Humph, as if that would happen. She had only been stirred by sympathy, but she was not stupid. "Oh, so you also know it's impossible." "Hey-8, what do you think? Fusa really is pitiful, but my shinobi instincts tell me that we can't forgive something like defection just because he's pitiful. It's very contradictory. Makoto, do you know the reason?" After thinking for a moment, Makoto replied, "Because of stance and rules. Our stance can only be on Konoha's side, so we cannot break Konoha's rules." "Stance and rules?" "Yes. If defection could be forgiven, then the village's rules would become meaningless. In the future, there would only be more rogue ninja leaking Konoha's intelligence. Think about it, if that continued for a long time, what would happen? the village of Konoha would collapse, and everyone in the village would lose the stable living environment they once had. Hey-Eights suddenly understood. Oh, so that's how it is. I get it now, Makoto. What you mean is that rules are the guarantee that most of us can live safely, and they can't be broken because of a single person. That's exactly it. Those who break the rules, no matter how pitiful they are still our enemies. Unless you place their interests above those of your own family and friends. You wouldn't do that, right? Of course not. Times 2. As long as someone wasn't stupid, no one would do such a thing except saints. Then that's settled. We can be kind, and that's a good quality. But the premise is that it cannot come at the cost of sacrificing the interests of the people around us or the majority. It's that simple. Hey-Eight sighed. Sigh, in the end, it all comes down to war. If there were no wars in this world, none of this would have happened. Hard to say. After returning home, he was alone. His parents were still at work. After resting for a while, Makoto began his usual training. It was not only because the Night of the Nine Tails was drawing closer, more importantly, training had already become part of his life. Just like before, he was obsessed with training. It allowed him to feel happiness. The feeling was like watching the numbers in a bank account slowly increase in his previous life. Why do children dislike studying? Because they cannot see positive feedback. Why are gym enthusiasts obsessed with lifting weights and taking mirror selfies? Because they can see the changes in their muscles growing. So even though his training progress was slow now, he could still see a little bit of growth. That tiny bit of positive feedback was already enough to make Makoto deeply addicted to it. Inside the bedroom, Makoto activated a barrier that blocked perception and chakra fluctuations. This was something he had set up after learning Fuinjutsu. When he set it up at the time, he had not thought much about it. He had simply learned the technique and practiced on his own room. Unexpectedly, it turned out to be useful today, saving him the time of setting it up again. Then he directly took out a sealing scroll and released the chakra of the seven tails. With the amount of chakra he possessed, he did not need to seal this thing into his body as a power bank. However, he could make use of the characteristics of tailed beast chakra to train. Because he had long discovered that in places where tailed beast chakra was active, white natural energy could also be absorbed more easily. It was just like when he had sensed the three tails chakra being highly active on the eastern front before, which had been beneficial for his training. It was similar to the hidden benefit he had recently gained while protecting Kushina. The tailed beast chakra leaking into the outside world would stimulate the red natural energy to become more active, thereby weakening the decomposing and annihilating force of the white natural energy. So after completing his experiment, he had kept this portion of Seven Tails chakra. This was essentially a training accelerator. This did not count as cheating. Strictly speaking, it was called making reasonable use of the resources at hand. As for where this resource came from, don't worry about it. In any case, the tailed beast chakra that leaked out would eventually dissipate completely. If he collected a little as a souvenir, it could be considered recycling waste. I will post some extra chapters in Patreon, you can check it out. Patreon.com/TitoViller. Chapter 134, Chapter 134, The Third Hokage made thorough arrangements. 2010 words. After resting for 2 days, Makoto's squad resumed their usual work rhythm, carrying out the duties of the Hokage Guard. Time passed slowly, step by step approaching October. Kushina's belly was getting bigger day by day, and Minato was like an old farmer waiting to harvest his crops, growing happier with each passing day, as if he had temporarily forgotten the troublesome matters tied to the Hokage's seat. Only Makoto was worrying himself sick. If others saw it, they might think the child was his. After Uzumaki Naruto grows up, if he doesn't beat him a few times, it would simply be unreasonable. One day in September, Minato took a day off and stayed home with his wife. Today it was Makoto's squad on duty, rotating shifts with Kakashi's squad, while Gonma's squad received 2 days of leave. If there was anything special about today, it was that a certain white-haired old pervert had finally torn himself away from the embrace of the ladies of the shinobi world and returned to Kanahagakure. Jiraiya, who had been obsessed with searching for the child of prophecy, had finally remembered that he still had a disciple and that the disciple was about to become a father, so he hurried back to pay a visit. Everything in the village was peaceful, and Minato would not trouble him with political matters, because he knew that his teacher had no interest in such things at all. If he mentioned them, with Jiraiya's personality he would simply go straight to the third Hokage to argue. That would not help his current situation in any way. Instead, it would create a rift in the relationship that was still fairly harmonious within their faction. Given Minato's intelligence, he understood this very clearly. Jiraiya was very happy, because Minato told him that he would name his child after the protagonist of his first novel. Although that name had merely been something he came up with casually while eating ramen, it still showed that his disciple respected him just as much as ever. Not long after finishing his meal, Jiraiya left. In Minato's home, the couple immersed in happiness radiated affection every second. For someone like him, a lifelong bachelor, it dealt hundreds of millions of tons of damage. His poor heart simply could not bear it. Outside, at Makoto's hidden observation point, Jiraiya hopped up onto the roof beside him in 2 or 3 jumps. Haven't seen you for more than half a year. Didn't expect you to have joined the ANBU. Jiraiya-sama, you've mistaken me. I am a member of the ANBU All Squad. Codename, Forest Owl. Come on, don't be so serious. Please do not interfere with my work. Honestly, don't become like that brat Kakashi. That's really not cute. There's no helping it. Since experts like Jiraiya-sama don't come back, we juniors can only work harder and put in more overtime. Eh? Do you have a problem with me? Yeah. Is that not allowed? I'm very curious, Jiraiya-sama, this time, after coming back, how long do you plan to stay in Konohagakure? That's classified, you know. Do you really want to ask? No, your answer has already told me. This afternoon, or tomorrow morning, you'll leave. Jiraiya was a little embarrassed. Ahahaha, what a sharp junior. You even guessed that. Sure enough, I really shouldn't have shown up in front of you. Are you sure you want to leave? Makoto pointed in the direction of Minato's home. At such a critical time? Don't make it sound so serious. It's still early. After calculating the timing in his mind, Jiraiya said, well, when the time comes, I'll come back. Besides, isn't the village still with Sensei and Minato? I hope so. Relax, kid. It's peacetime right now. There's no intelligence showing that any ninja village would invade Konohagakure so soon after the war has just ended. Don't let your imagination run wild and make yourself so tense. You need to learn to relax. Well then, goodbye. After saying that, the old white-haired man ran off. Relax my ass. Makoto guaranteed that when the time came, Jiraiya would not be able to return. Stopping him would be far too easy. Just release some fake information about Nagato's trio, and he could be lured away immediately. The disciple at home simply was not as enticing as those out in the wild. If that really did not work, releasing some information about Tsunade could achieve the same effect. How could a disciple be more important than a goddess? It was not that he was an irresponsible person. Rather, from Jiraiya's point of view, with Konohagakure's current strength and the state of the shinobi world, there really was no need for him and Tsunade to come back. Because everyone believed that no one had the ability to break through Konohagakure's layers of blockade and come in to cause destruction. Those who had that level of strength were already dead. No one knew that an old ghost who was already dead had passed the Nine-Tails summoning contract to a little ghost who was supposedly dead on the surface. Time entered October, and Kushina's due date was drawing closer day by day. But the entire village of Konohagakure remained peaceful as ever, with no abnormalities at all. A matter like a Jinchuriki giving birth was not intelligence that ordinary villagers and ninjas could know about. Inside a meeting room in the Hokage building, the 5 people holding the highest power in Konohagakure had gathered together to discuss the work arrangements for the Jinchuriki's delivery. This was of vital importance to Konohagakure. If anything went wrong and the Nine-Tails got out, Konohagakure would suffer grievous losses. However, although Konoha F4 had witnessed the Nine-Tails' power before, they were not overly worried. After all, that man had already died many years ago. As long as the Uchiha clan was not allowed to approach the Jinchuriki during the delivery, basically no major problem would arise. The only ones capable of controlling the Nine Tails were the Sharingan of the Uchiha clan. But after so many years of suppression and observation by them, no one in that clan possessed such terrifying ocular power anymore. After exhaling a puff of old smoke, Hiruzen asked, "Fourth Hokage, do the ANBU responsible for guarding Kushina know her exact due date?" "They do not. This matter is known only to Biwako-sama, her disciple Hebijai, and those of us present here." Danzo suddenly said, "That may not be so. As far as this old man knows, your Hokage guard, as part of the ANBU, often violates regulations by making close contact with the Jinchuriki. And Higashino Makoto, having learned superb medical ninjutsu from his mother, would he not know?" Minato frowned slightly. "Makoto does know medical ninjutsu, but he has never had contact with Kushina's body, nor does he know the specific date of her pregnancy, so he cannot possibly calculate the due date. Kushina only taught them Fuinjutsu. She has never spoken of any intelligence beyond ninjutsu. Besides, even if Makoto knew, I trust he would not speak carelessly." "Poof." Danzo said nothing more. It was not that he suspected Makoto and the others. Rather, it was simply his habit to find faults with the young Hokage, so that his old comrades could see that this Hokage was still somewhat immature and required their continued assistance. If Minato appeared too perfect and flawless, how could the continued existence of Root demonstrate its necessity? The third Hokage also reprimanded him. "Danzo, watch your words. Makoto and Kakashi and the others are the future of Konohagakure. They are absolutely trustworthy." "I never said they were not trustworthy. I merely pointed out the flaw in the fourth Hokage's statement." Hamura immediately turned the topic back. "Let's talk about the arrangements for the Jinchuriki's delivery. That is the matter that needs to be resolved right now." Minato had always disliked the way these three old men referred to her, Jinchuriki this, Jinchuriki that. What, did his wife not have a name? But he was a gentle person and did not wish to make things unpleasant with these seniors. "I think there is no need for overly deliberate arrangements. Everything can proceed as usual. She can give birth at home. When the time comes, I will use Flying Thunder God to directly teleport Biwako-sama and Hebijai to the house. No one will notice anything unusual. Even if there is a problem, I can use ninjutsu to move Kushina away." On the contrary, if the ANBU were mobilized on a large scale, it would instead make those with ulterior motives notice something unusual. His meaning was simple: everything would proceed quietly and unnoticed. Both he and his wife were masters of Fuinjutsu, and the defensive barrier at their home was no weaker than one set up at a specially prepared location. When Kushina gave birth, the fluctuations of tailed beast chakra caused by the loosening of the seal would not spread outside. When Kohara heard this, she firmly opposed it. "Fourth Hokage, I absolutely do not agree with such an arrangement. That is the Nine Tails. If an accident occurs, the entire village will be destroyed. We cannot bear such consequences." Hamura said, "Koharu is right." Danzo said, "Minato, you are the Hokage of Konohagakure. How can you be so careless about the weight of this matter? I now doubt whether you have truly placed the village in your heart." "Minato. This is not right, is it?" As the discussion went on, how did everything turn toward me? Weren't they discussing the matter of my wife giving birth? Why does it feel like this has become a meeting to criticize me? Watching the argument among the others, the third Hokage finally made the decision. "Let me arrange this matter. The place of delivery certainly cannot be inside the village. I will prepare a secret location. At that time, Biwako will take you and Kushina there. The outer perimeter will be set with multiple layers of blockade by the ANBU. Absolutely no unrelated personnel will be allowed to approach. That should prevent any problems." Minato felt uneasy. "Third Hokage, the more preparations we make, the more exposure there will be. The easier it will be for someone to analyze the intelligence. Is this really appropriate? Hiruzen took a long drag of his pipe and spoke in the tone of an elder. Minato, it seems you still do not understand. Among those who could break through the many layers of Konohagakure's ANBU blockade and successfully enter the barrier, aside from your space-time ninjutsu, such people no longer exist. The real danger is the Nine Tails itself. Minato understood. In the end, everyone subconsciously believed that the enemy was not outside, it was inside Kushina's stomach. All the arrangements focused not on preventing external enemies from invading, but on preventing the Nine Tails from going berserk. After all, if there truly were enemies, they would first have to pass the barrier of Konohagakure's shinobi, then face the entire ANBU, and finally confront the many layers of barriers within the delivery site. But if the Nine Tails came out, it would only need a single roar to shatter all of that. With a single breath, it could blow Konohagakure into the sky. In the end, in their eyes, the village would always be more important than Kushina's life. Minato did not think there was anything wrong with that. It was perfectly normal. But what about himself? In his own heart, which side was more important? Minato sighed and said, "Very well. We will proceed according to the third Hokage's plan." The third Hokage nodded with satisfaction. The meaning was obvious: young man, listening to us old fellows will never lead you wrong. Danzo and the other two did not object either. Arranging for the Jinchuriki to give birth outside the village was the safest choice. No matter what, they could not risk the village. I will post some extra chapters in Patreon, you can check it out. Patreon.com/TitoViller. Chapter 135, Chapter 135, Minato feels this one is secure. 1930 words. The moon was nearing fullness, and the night air was slightly cool. Recently, it was Makoto's squad's turn for night duty. With the delivery date approaching, the Nine Tails knew that at that critical moment the seal of the Jinchuriki would loosen greatly. That would be its best opportunity to break free. The day of great joy was right before its eyes, freedom for its fox life was within reach. This made it increasingly excited. Although no chakra leaked out to affect the real world, as the most powerful tailed beast, fluctuations of its will could still pass through the seal slightly, interfering with the omnipresent natural energy around Minato's house. The red natural energy grew even more violent in aura, overwhelmingly forceful. During breaks from work, Makoto was, as usual, enjoying his benefits. While on duty, the Nine Tails helped him train. After work, he used the Seven Tails chakra to accelerate. The tailed beasts were truly good people. Makoto almost wanted to put on a suit, tie a tie, shake their claws, and say thank you. After such a long period of hard grinding, he had now greatly improved the efficiency with which he absorbed the white natural energy. Along with the accelerated growth of his body, even the yin-yang mixing ratio and his chakra control training had each advanced toward the extremes, reaching the 90% threshold. The progress was really gratifying. Suddenly, Makoto, who had been immersed in training, opened his eyes and looked at the figure that appeared beside him. Minato-senpai, sneaking out at night to look for a handsome young boy like me. If Kushina-senpai finds out, she won't get angry, will she? The fourth Hokage looked somewhat embarrassed by this remark. Kakashi was right. You really do enjoy these kinds of mischievous jokes. Oh? It seems Minato-senpai is a serious person. So then, what did you come out for? To clear your mind? Ah, was it that obvious? You've already written I have something on my mind, I'm unhappy all over your face. Is that so? It seems my mental discipline still isn't enough. Minato mocked himself, then suddenly asked, Makoto, what do you think of how I'm doing as Hokage? Had the little son been struck again by those old men? But something like this, how could a mere Chunin comment on it? Sorry, Hokage-sama. As subordinates, we can't casually evaluate the Hokage's work. No, there is no Hokage and subordinate here. Just a conversation between friends. All right then. After thinking for a moment, Makoto asked in return, do you want to hear the truth, or a lie? Minato was certain now. This guy really was exactly as Jonin Komomi had said, his mind was a bit different from other people's. Talking with him always led to unexpected discoveries, mischievous humor aside. That was also the reason he had come outside tonight, to find Makoto and relieve his mood. Tell me the lie first. Konoha has returned to the right track. Everything is exactly the same as when I was little. And the truth? Konoha has returned to the right track. Everything is exactly the same as when I was little. Is there any difference between the lie and the truth? After saying this, Minato suddenly reacted. What you said actually makes a lot of sense. Minato-senpai, you are Konoha's Hokage. You should know that sometimes, no change is the best outcome. The elders generally do not like overly drastic change. Minato murmured, yes, you're right. But if that's the case, then what is the meaning of my being elected Hokage? Among all the candidates, you were the most perfect successor, in every respect. That is the meaning. Minato looked at Makoto in surprise. Makoto, you really do see things clearly. Then, do you have any good advice for me? Of course I do. That is, wait. Wait? Yes, Minato-senpai, wait. No matter what advice I may have, our top priority next is to solve the problem in your household. Wait until you are holding your own child in your arms before talking about it. Minato knew what Makoto meant by the problem in his household. He carefully recalled every bit and piece since getting to know Makoto, starting from being the chief proctor of the third round of the Chunin exams, to the Northern Front, to Makoto becoming a member of his Shadow Guard squad. He was still very young, and his memory was good. The scenes flashed rapidly through his mind. At last, Minato suddenly asked, Makoto, you know Kushina's due date, right? I do. So it really is just as I thought. How did you know? Well, although I would like to say that I am a medical ninja and also a sensory ninja, and thanks to Kushina-senpai and you, I now have the additional identity of a ceiling ninja as well, so there are some things I can roughly calculate. But in fact, it was not that complicated. A week ago, when Biwako-sama came to visit Kushina-senpai, a certain rather thick-nerved person said it herself, and not quietly either. Minato was somewhat embarrassed. His wife was indeed a bit careless and straightforward. He quickly changed the subject. Did all of you hear it? No, only I heard it. With the help of vibrations in the air, so-called not quietly only applies from my perspective. Heiei and Yugao do not currently possess that kind of ability. Minato let out a sigh of relief, then thought of one of Makoto's previous missions. In mid-August, you took the mission in Takigakure. At the time, you had already guessed something, hadn't you? I had some suspicions. After all, among all the small hidden villages in the shinobi world, only they possess a tailed beast. Fortunately, luck was on our side. As for the detailed situation, I think Leader Heisen has already told you in the letter. That's right, so... Minato looked at Makoto seriously. Makoto, you seem to be very interested in tailed beasts. Look, this was exactly the kind of perfect ninja Jiraiya had described. He could always find the thread from the slightest clues and connect everything together. My, Minato-senpai, that investigative attitude of yours, are you suspecting me? Minato showed a sunny smile. I have never suspected you. If I truly suspected you, I would not have come to ask you personally. I only want to know why. Makoto fell silent for several seconds before speaking. If the tailed beast is extracted from a Jinchuriki, the Jinchuriki will die, right? Yes. That is something many high-level ninjas know. I think you will be a good Hokage. And I am also grateful that Kushina-senpai selflessly taught me Fuinjutsu, so I developed a sealing technique. With your talent, that does not surprise me. What does it do? It can ensure that a Jinchuriki can still survive after the tailed beast is extracted. Minato was stunned. For a Jinchuriki, a ninjutsu like this was no less than gaining an extra life. For Konoha, its significance was even greater. Although he was not a Jinchuriki, he was the husband of one, so he understood even more clearly how precious this ninjutsu was. But he quickly calmed down. Makoto, do you think something unexpected will happen during Kushina's childbirth? Makoto spread his hands. How would I know that? I simply have the habit of making thorough preparations beforehand. That has always been my way of doing things. Is that so? That's great. I can finally feel at ease. Whether something unexpected happens to Kushina or not, at least her safety now has a safeguard. What a hopeless romantic. Wake up, Minato-senpai, you're the Hokage. If something really goes wrong, wouldn't Konoha be the one that suffers the most? So, on the day of the childbirth, what will our mission be? Minato's expression did not look very good when he heard that. There will be no mission. The third has already arranged everything. At that time, it will all be handled by his direct ANBU, and you, because of your age, will not be allowed to take part. Makoto asked curiously, that I can understand. Strictly speaking, we are still all children. For something dangerous like this, adult ninjas should naturally go first. That fits the will of fire. But Minato-senpai, you should know my strength. Am I also excluded? Yes. Precisely because your strength is powerful, the third believes that you are the core of Konoha's next generation of ninjas after me. That is all the more reason not to let you take risks. I also agree with this. Then what about now? It's the same now. If everything goes smoothly, that would be best. But if something unexpected happens, Makoto, you will be the last hope for Kushina and me. I absolutely cannot let anything happen to you. Don't worry. You know it yourself, killing me isn't that easy. I know. Minato stood up, a relieved smile spreading across his face. He patted Makoto on the shoulder. Then, Makoto, if the situation changes at that time, I'll be counting on you. Don't worry, Hokage-sama. Minato turned and walked back home with light and cheerful steps. Even though he very much wanted to share this good news with Kushina right now, he remained very calm. For the time being, it was enough that only he and Makoto knew about the new sealing technique. It could not be told to a third person, not even his own wife. After he left, Makoto also fell into thought. The real situation had diverged from his expectations. In order to protect promising members of the next generation like them, the village would not allow them to participate in matters involving the Jinchuriki. Makoto was not the kind of hot-headed fool like Naruto who would charge in precisely because he was forbidden to take part. He preferred to guide things according to the situation. He remembered that in the original timeline, the place where Kushina gave birth was some distance from Konoha's main district, and Obito himself also possessed space-time ninjutsu. He had taken Kushina and shifted her to an even more distant location, released the Nine Tails, and then teleported himself to Konoha, directly summoning the Nine Tails there. If it were possible to prevent the tailed beast from being extracted, that would be the best outcome. But if it could not be stopped immediately, then the first thing Makoto had to ensure was the safety of his own family. No matter how grateful he was to Minato and Kushina, he would never place them above his own parents. That was simply human nature. As for the matter of the Nine Tails being released, since the four elders of Konoha had such confidence in their arrangements, then they could take another look at the big fox. Although Minato had not stated it outright just now, it was clear from his expression that at the highest level of authority, he had once again been democratically decided for. He could not even decide where his own wife would give birth. As both husband and Hokage, it would be strange if he were happy about that. The only reason he had not fallen out on the spot was because of his good temper. Even if this time passed safely, he would still fall back into that same stalemate of power afterward. Continuing like this was not a solution. With so many decision-makers above them, these ninjas would not even know whose orders they were supposed to follow. I will post some extra chapters in Patreon, you can check it out. Patreon.com/TitoViller. Chapter 136, Chapter 136, The Night of the Nine. 1684 words. October 10th. Makoto was sleeping at home. Working the night shift was like this, working at night and resting during the day. But he was not truly asleep, he was paying attention to the movements in the village. With him, Makoto, existing in this world, this was not the original timeline. Who knew whether Kushina would still give birth today? Fortunately, everything seemed not to have changed much. In the morning, the third brought his wife, Biwako, to visit Minato's home. On the surface, it seemed just like before, normal visits between the two families, but in reality, it was to explain certain matters to the young couple. In the afternoon, Biwako came again and went out shopping with Kushina, but in fact they were transferring toward the barrier outside the village. It seemed the childbirth would indeed be today. The Higashino family's residence was relatively remote. Like the Yuzuki and Heiei households, it was not located in the village center. If one had to make a comparison, it would probably be around Konoha's third ring. Night fell, and Higashino Jiro and his wife returned home from work. At present, Higashino Megumi was still working at the hospital, though her position had been raised one level higher than before. As a jonin, after the war, Higashino Jiro's main duty was to command the defensive patrol forces in the western district of Konoha. He was subordinate to the Jonin Corps and the Hokage, and could be considered to have gained real authority within Konoha. Makoto had rendered great merit during the war, but since he was still young, aside from ninjutsu and monetary rewards, the other benefits all fell to his parents. He was not Kakashi, there was no need to compensate him by promoting him directly to Jonin. After the war, Konoha also did not need to break Kakashi's record for the youngest Jonin in order to boost morale. After dinner, Makoto asked, "Mom, do you still need to go to the hospital tonight?" Megumi was somewhat surprised. "What is it, Makoto? Do you need something?" "Of course. Something very important. If anything big happens in the village tonight, remember not to go check it out. Organize the nearby residents and head to the shelters immediately." Jiro asked directly, "Makoto, will something unexpected happen tonight?" "What do you know?" "Father, today is the day Kushina-senpai gives birth. She is Konoha's Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. During childbirth, the seal will loosen, and there is a risk that the tailed beast may escape." After hearing this, the two of them felt somewhat worried. Their status in the village was not low, and they were also familiar with Minato's family, so they naturally knew Kushina's identity. They had only not expected that she would give birth today. Very few people knew such information. Megumi asked with concern, "Makoto, do you still have to go to work?" "Yes, Mom. There are no other orders from above, so everything must proceed as usual." "Don't worry, I will be fine." Jiro also comforted her. "Megumi, Makoto is very strong. There is no need to worry. Just do as he said. If something unexpected happens, be sure to stay away from the center of the battle. You have never seen a tailed beast, you do not know how terrifying they are." Megumi nodded blankly. "I understand." Jiro did not mention himself, and there was no need to. If something really did happen, as one of Konoha's jonin, he would have to fight on the front line. When it came to tailed beasts, there was simply no meaning in Chunin rushing forward. They were not even qualified to scratch the itch. Inside the ANBU base, in the activity room of the Shadow Guard unit, the three of them had already put on their equipment. He said to Heiei and Yugao, "If fighting breaks out tonight, remember to go back immediately and protect your families by keeping them away from the danger zone." Heiei reacted at once. "Kushina-senpai's due date is today?" "Yes." "Alright, we understand." The two of them did not ask further. As usual, the squad headed toward Minato's home. They still thought she would give birth at home and did not know that the place was already empty. After arriving at the guard point, Makoto did not hide himself, but stood on the rooftop, looking at peaceful and tranquil Kanahagakure. Not long after night fell, quite a few people, having finished dinner, chose to go out for a walk to digest their food. The various izakayas were also full of voices, unusually lively. The whole of Konoha was brightly lit, and the streets were crowded with streams of people. At this moment, within the barrier far back in Konoha's rear mountain area, Kushina let out painful screams as she struggled to give birth. How painful was childbirth for a woman? Makoto, who had been a man in both lives, did not know. But Biwako was right, this was a pain that even men might not be able to endure. That place was already beyond Makoto's range of perception. With the childbirth site chosen so far away, one could imagine just how deep Konoha's F4's fear of the Ninetales ran. They had never been overly worried about enemy invasion. The focus of their defenses had always been the Nine Tails, with the idea that even if the Nine Tails broke through the seal, it had to be dealt with outside the village. Layer upon layer of barriers had been arranged inside and outside the childbirth site. Even if Makoto could sense that far, he still could not clearly perceive what was happening inside. Kanahagakure was the strongest shinobi village in the world and possessed all of the Uzumaki clan's sealing inheritance. The barriers it set up were nothing like the cheap knockoff goods put together by Takigakure. Not only that, several layers of ANBU had been stationed around the outer perimeter of the childbirth site, forbidding anyone from approaching. This included Makoto. Without the Hokage's permission, no matter who entered would be treated as an enemy and killed. When it concerned a Jinchuriki, no one would talk to you about personal feelings. Even the title of Konoha hero would not help. Honestly, Makoto found these arrangements a bit hard to criticize. With so many people surrounding the place, it was obvious at a glance that something major was happening. As long as Obito knew the approximate date, once he reached Konoha he could find the target with his eyes closed. Did he know the date? Of course he did. There was no need for Kakashi to leak it. Kushina herself actually had very little awareness of keeping it secret. She often ran around the village with her big belly and even occasionally went to the hospital for checkups. In fact, although Kakashi often talked to himself while visiting the graves, he had never actually revealed anything substantive. One could doubt his decadence, but one could not doubt his qualities as a shinobi. Especially after being tricked once by Makoto, he no longer spoke aloud when visiting graves, and instead said everything in his mind. Time passed, and the moon became full and round. Suddenly, Makoto sensed a fluctuation of chakra coming from Minato's room. He immediately gave a hand signal to Heiate and Yugao, telling them to withdraw. After receiving the signal, the two of them left quickly. Makoto himself rushed into Minato's house. Inside the bedroom of Minato's residence, when Makoto rushed in, he saw him placing a baby on the bed. Sensing the familiar chakra approaching, Minato said, "Makoto, something unexpected has happened. Help me take care of Naruto for a moment while I bring Kushina here." "Alright, go quickly." The situation was urgent, and Minato did not stand on ceremony. With a flash, he disappeared. The childbirth site was somewhat far for ordinary shinobi, but for someone who could use Flying Thunder God, it was just a matter of one ninjutsu. Looking at the little fellow on the bed who was crying with all his strength, Makoto felt very curious. This was Uzumaki Naruto, if he would still carry the surname Uzumaki in the future. The sage of Talk no Jutsu of the original timeline, the savior of the shinobi world. At this moment, he was merely a newborn infant who had just arrived in this world. The moment he was born, his senior Obito had already sent him a congratulatory gift, a warm pack burning with beautiful flames. Unfortunately, his father had refused it. The little fellow kept crying. Makoto placed a finger by his mouth. Naruto seemed to feel reassured and instinctively began to suck on it. Makoto infused chakra into his body and immediately sensed a surging vitality. Truly worthy of the Uzumaki constitution, the reincarnation of Azura. However, Makoto did not sense where the so-called Azura chakra was. Perhaps that thing was simply inseparable from Naruto himself and impossible to distinguish. So was he Naruto, or the Sage of Six Paths' son Azura? A familiar fluctuation of chakra appeared again. Minato returned carrying Kushina. At this moment, the energetic Wanisan, who was usually full of vitality and drive, was so weak she looked as if she might collapse at any moment. Yet she paid no attention to her own body, in her eyes there was only her son. After her husband placed her on the bed, she immediately reached out and held Naruto. In her understanding, this might be the first and the last time the mother and son would meet in this world. Naruto. She did not even notice Makoto standing to the side. Minato said, "Makoto, I'll leave the rest to you." "Leave it to me." After hearing the reply, the fourth Hokage opened the wardrobe, put on the Hokage ceremonial robe, and with a flash of his figure, disappeared again. Because he knew his wife would not die, he did not say much more to Kushina. There was still an enemy waiting for him to face. I will post some extra chapters in Patreon, you can check it out. Patreon.com/TitoViller. Chapter 137, Chapter 137, The Night of the Nine. 1,637 words. Until this moment, Kushina finally noticed that there was still someone else in the house. At the moment between life and death, her usually carefree mind suddenly became sharp, and she understood that this was Minato's arrangement. Makoto, it's you. Sorry to trouble you with taking care of Naruto. But could you step outside for a moment? In these final moments, I want to quietly stay with Naruto. No problem, Kushina-senpai. But I'm going to extend those final moments for you just a little. This one Isan truly possessed authentic Uzumaki bloodline, the kind with extremely high purity. Even after having the tailed beast extracted, her vitality was still astonishing. Of course, the rate at which it was draining was also exceptionally fast. However, if an ordinary Jinchuriki encountered this situation, they would die on the spot. She could at least still hold on for half a day. With a thought, Makoto instantly entered Sage mode. Then he quickly formed hand seals, pressing his right palm against the sealing position on Kushina's abdomen. Sage Art, Fuinjutsu, 2-form seal. The original tailed beast seal had already disappeared, and a new seal spread over it. Neat and symmetrical runic patterns crawled across her entire body. Then they contracted, gathering at her lower abdomen. Within the outer 4-symbol seal, they transformed into a two-toned yin-yang fish pattern. The body's yin and yang reconstruction was successfully completed. Not only that, the colors of yin and yang were deeper than during the last experiment, already approaching pure black and white. This change was brought about by Makoto's improvement in his yin-yang attribute training. The current 2-form seal was more complete than it had been more than a month ago, and its effect was also stronger. The originally weak Kushina suddenly froze. She discovered that the life force that had been rapidly draining from her had stopped in an instant, as if someone had forcibly interrupted it. This one Isan realized that she might not have to die after all. She propped herself up with both hands and sat on the bed, staring in disbelief at her abdomen. The seal there felt both familiar and unfamiliar to her. As a sealing master, her professional instinct kicked in. What kind of sealing technique is this? 2-form seal. Its function is to stop my life force from draining, right? To be precise, the extraction of the 9 tails disrupted the yin-yang balance inside your body. This ninjutsu reconstructs that balance within you. 2 forms refers to yin and yang. That's really amazing. Did you develop it specifically for me? Yes. After I learned about the matter of the tailed beasts, I looked into some of the secrets of Jinchuriki. Thank you for teaching me sealing knowledge, senpai. So I developed this ninjutsu as a return gift from a student to his sensei. Makoto, thank you. After thanking him, Kushina looked lovingly at Naruto sleeping beside her and asked, how long can I still live? Don't lie to me, I can feel that there is still a trace of life force continuing to drain. Now that she was out of mortal danger, she slipped back into her usual way of speaking. With your abundant life force, living another 20 years won't be a problem. But I'll keep growing too, Kushina-senpai, so you should have confidence in me. Once I perfect this ninjutsu, making sure you live to die of old age won't be a problem. In any case, you'll definitely live long enough to hold your grandchildren. That's great. I believe in you. After saying that, she remembered Minato's behavior and said unhappily, Minato knew too, didn't he? Did you two team up to hide it from me? Alright, I'm fine here already. Hurry and go help Minato. The enemy is very mysterious. Then I'm going. See you again in a bit. Outside, chaos reigned. The whole of Konoha had turned into a complete mess. With something as huge as the 9 tails suddenly descending on the center of Konoha, no one could take that calmly. At this moment, the giant fox was raging. One step could crush a house, and with one swipe of its claw, it could send the Konoha ninja charging forward flying away. It was no different from swatting mosquitoes. The surrounding civilians all fled for their lives, retreating toward Konoha's other 2 evacuation points. the shelter beneath the Hokage rock was definitely no longer an option. The Nine-Tails was standing not far from it, and it could easily be caught in the destruction. The ninja responsible for evacuating the civilians understood this clearly, so they guided the flow of people away to both sides. The Nine-Tails paid no attention to those ants. It was searching for its target, and then it saw that man, the fourth Hokage, Namake's Minato, standing atop the Hokage rock. At this point, the Nine-Tails was still under Obito's control, and the one he most wanted to kill was also his own teacher. What admirable filial piety! In his view, Kushina was as good as dead. Now, as long as he killed Minato and then let the Nine-Tails rampage through Konoha for a while, the result of this trip would count as a complete success. Under his control, the Nine-Tails opened its mouth and condensed a tailed beast ball, then fired it directly at Minato. The enormous physical sphere of energy was incomparably heavy, destroying the buildings along its path the whole way. This was near the Hokage building, the very center of Konoha. If anyone inside had not evacuated yet, they were basically doomed. Fortunately, Minato was not weak either. He quickly formed hand seals and used Flying Thunder God, Guiding Thunder, teleporting the dangerous tailed beast ball to a place much farther beyond the back mountain. The violent explosion lit up that part of the sky like broad daylight, and the huge noise shook heaven and earth. A tailed beast was a natural disaster. This was the proof. When Makoto came out, this was the scene he saw. Minato had neutralized the tailed beast ball attack, but the danger had not yet been resolved. A gloved hand was quietly reaching toward Minato's back. Minato's perception was strong and his reactions sharp. He quickly turned around and struck at him with a kunai, but astonishingly, the three-pronged kunai passed straight through Masked Obito's head. When it passed through his hand, Masked Obito materialized and grabbed the wrist of the hand with which his teacher held the kunai. "Your opponent is me, and this ends here." After finishing his showy remarks, he prepared to use the Kamui Dojutsu to absorb Minato into the shared space he and Kakashi possessed. Whether the Flying Thunder God could escape from that space, no one knew. But it was worth a try. If it worked, he would not even need to make a move. Minato could simply be trapped inside until death. Unfortunately, before his dojutsu could even begin, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest. Obito looked down and saw that a short ninja blade had pierced straight through him from behind. Turning his head, he saw only a brat wearing an ANBU mask, who had appeared behind him at some unknown moment. "Who are you? How did you get here? Why did you stab me?" The poor Obito wanted to question him, but the truly heart-piercing pain only forced a miserable scream from him. Immediately afterward, the Hashirama cells throughout his body went berserk, and countless sharp wooden spikes burst out, turning him into a hedgehog. Minato quickly leapt away, landing atop the head of the third Hokage's stone visage. Seeing the scene before him, he was stunned. "Who exactly are you? You can even use wood release?" Obito could not answer. His body went limp, and he collapsed headfirst to the ground. The one who had delivered the fatal blow from behind was naturally Makoto. At that moment, Obito had been gripping Minato's arm, while Minato held his Flying Thunder God kunai and the Flying Thunder God mark could be shared between them. Seeing that situation, how could Makoto hold himself back? He instantly teleported over to Obito to exchange some heartfelt words with him. Makoto also jumped up beside Minato. "So this is wood release? That really is dangerous." As the fourth Hokage, Minato's first concern upon seeing Makoto was not the village, but his wife. "Makoto, how is Kushina?" "No problem. Her vital signs have already stabilized." "That's good." Minato let out a sigh of relief. Only then did he turn his attention to the rampaging Nine-Tails. "We have to move that thing outside the village." Makoto grabbed him. "I'll handle it. Go after that guy. Since he has wood release, the stab through the heart just now might not have killed him." Minato did not hesitate. "All right. Be careful. Don't take too long. I won't be able to hold the Nine-Tails for very long." "Understood." With those words, Minato disappeared. When Makoto had just stabbed Obito through the heart, Minato had not simply stood there doing nothing. Cleverly, he used his other hand to leave a flying thunder god mark on him. Before he could follow up with another ruthless strike, Obito's wood release had already gone berserk. Makoto had left one too. Now, Obito's body was covered with marks left by the two of them. Only at this moment did the third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, arrive near the Ninetales with his people. His thinking was the same as Minato's, they had to move the giant beast outside the village. But he did not know the flying thunder god. He could only deal with it head-on. I will post some extra chapters in Patreon, you can check it out. Patreon.com/TitoViller. Chapter 138, Chapter 138, The Night of the Nine. 1888 words. At the center of Kanahagakure, flames soared into the sky and explosions erupted one after another. Dense volleys of kunai were thrown out by the shinobi, each one attached with an explosive tag. But these attacks were not even enough to scratch the Nine Tails. Explosive tags detonated on its face, and it did not even blink after all, it was a chakra lifeform, and its eyes would not dry out anyway. Some bold shinobi rushed in close to attack, only to be swept away by a casual swing of the Ninetales' claw. On a nearby street, Kakashi and Guy were just about to step forward to help when Kurenai's father, the Jonin Yuhi Shinku, stopped them, forbidding these miners from joining the battle. Near the Nine Tails, the third arrived and immediately issued orders. We must prevent the village from being destroyed. Drive the Nine Tails beyond the walls. Buy me time to launch my ninjutsu, your attacks must not slacken for even a moment. Yes. Many shinobi acknowledged the command and began launching dense waves of attacks. But this kind of harassment posed no threat to the Ninetales and only provoked its fury further. Higashino Jiro and Yuzuki Yuya were also among the attacking crowd, but after so many years surviving in the shinobi world, they had never felt as powerless as they did now. Ordinary shinobi attacks simply had no effect on the Ninetales, they only added to the casualties. The enraged Ninetales slammed its claws into the ground again and again. Countless chunks of earth mixed with shattered building debris shot toward the shinobi like artillery shells. If someone failed to dodge, even a jonin struck by one would be sent straight to the Pure Land. The two of them darted left and right, avoiding the flying debris while also slashing apart massive fragments of ruined buildings nearby with vacuum blade, saving some companions whose strength was insufficient and who had fallen into danger. Suddenly, a figure flashed beside Jiro. Makoto appeared on the front line. Naturally, his father also carried a flying thunder god kunai. After arriving, Makoto had no time to exchange words with the two of them. He immediately raised both hands and blocked all incoming attacks. Sage Art, Earth Release, One Horn Great Wall. A massive earth-colored chakra release spread outward from Makoto as its starting point, extending to both sides and forming a curved, semi-transparent wall like a fortress rampart. The ninjutsu formed a semicircular barrier, blocking all the incoming flying projectiles. After rescuing Kanahagakure's companions at the fastest possible speed, Makoto shot up into the sky and swiftly arrived above the Ninetales' head. Sage Art, Wind Release, Two Forms Wind King's Barrier. This ninjutsu, which already possessed barrier properties, had been improved by Makoto and combined with the two-form seal, forming a massive wind release cage of swirling black and white that completely enclosed the Ninetales. Outside the cage, the two colors intertwined like an inkwash landscape painting, while the Ninetales struggled wildly within. But it would not hold for long. If the Great Fox fired a tailed beast ball inside, not only would the barrier shatter, it would also blast the center of Kanahagakure into the sky. Makoto immediately used the Flying Thunder God, transferring the barrier together with the entire Ninetales to the forest outside Kanahagakure. For the moment, the danger was gone. The Ninetales disappeared? Did we win? Doesn't matter. We're saved anyway, what a close call. Quick! Where are the medical ninjas? Hurry and save my wife. The one shouting for help was named Yumano Ikaku, a jonin of Kanahagakure. At this moment he completely ignored the injuries covering his own body. In his arms he held his wife, Yumano Kairi. Her condition was severe, and she had already fallen unconscious. Very soon, shinobi from the medical unit arrived. They lifted her onto a stretcher and ran in the direction of the hospital. Yuya nudged Jiro beside him. Hey, that kid Makoto disappeared together with the Ninetales. Your son's gone. Jiro responded. His eyes stared blankly at the ruins left behind by the Ninetales. He had once thought his son was merely an ordinary genius. Later he realized that the boy was a bit too much of a genius, so much so that even Jonin like them could not understand him at all. Is that really my son? Maybe I should go home and try having another one. Old Enma had been summoned by the third Hokage. He had just seen the Ninetales, and then the creature had been wrapped up like a rice dumpling before disappearing. Blinking his eyes, he turned to look at his old companion. Just now. Was that little Minato's Flying Thunder God technique? Hiruzen let out a breath of relief. It was Flying Thunder God, but it wasn't Minato who used it. It should have been that child Makoto. Truly astonishing talent, he even learned that technique. In that case, if there's nothing else, I'll go back. No. The battle isn't over yet. First transform into the adamantine staff. Alright. The third Hokage grabbed the staff in one motion and shouted to the shinobi, "Follow me. We're going to provide support." There was no need to ask where they were going, because from the distant forest south of Kanahagakure, the roar of the Ninetales had appeared again. After transferring the Ninetales out, Makoto changed his hand seals and altered the ninjutsu. Under the Ninetales' attacks, the two forms Wind King's barrier was already on the verge of collapse and could no longer hold. Makoto simply cancelled the barrier himself, turning the chakra into curse marks that bound the Ninetales like chains. Using a pure two-form seal to tether the Ninetales. At this moment, the Ninetales was struggling against the curse-marked chains wrapped around its body. Its strength was astonishing, and Makoto found the suppression extremely difficult. Since the two-form seal could reconstruct the balance of yin and yang, it could naturally also disrupt that balance. Destroying was always far easier than constructing. Right now, the Ninetales chakra had been thrown into disorder by the two-form seal, only disturbed, nothing more. It prevented the beast from gathering chakra to spit out a tailed beast ball, forcing it to rely solely on brute physical strength to break free. Suddenly, the struggling Ninetales quieted down. The confusion in its eyes vanished, and its pupils returned to their vertical shape. The control over it had been lifted, and its reason returned. But it was still furious. Damn it, this Ninetale-sama had been exploited by the Sharingan again. That familiar feeling. Uchiha Madara, damn you! The Ninetale struggled once more and discovered that its entire body was being restrained. Lowering its head, it spotted an Anbu brat whose scent felt familiar, though it did not recognize him. Hey, brat, you smell really good. Hurry up and release this lord. Come over obediently and let me take a bite. Damn it, your mouth is that big, if you take one bite, I'll be gone. Wait a moment. I'll use water release to wash myself first, so I'll taste even better when you eat me. Bastard, release this lord at once. I'm going to destroy Kanahagakure. The Ninetales not only hated Uchiha Madara, it also hated Senju Hashirama, who had lifted it like a little chick. Neither of them were good people. The Kanahagakure they had established had no reason to exist either. Makoto shouted back, "Sure. But can you handle all that work by yourself? Want to hire me to help? My wages are very low." Brat, you're mocking this old one. How could I dare? I'm trembling all over with fear right now. Makoto was indeed trembling, but not from fear, he was exhausted. Suppressing the Ninetales was truly hard work. The reason he was bantering with the Ninetales was simply to stall for time. Very soon, a ripple of chakra appeared beside him, and the fourth flashed over. How is it, Minato-senpai? Did you eliminate that guy? Sorry, I failed. I only managed to cancel the summoning contract between him and the Ninetales, and then a strange figure emerged from the ground and rescued him. That kind of thing happened? Makoto thought it was probably Black Zetsu's doing. After all, Obito was still the operational director of his nested schemes, rings within rings of conspiracies, and still had his uses. He had to be saved. I didn't sense his appearance at all. He must possess some secret technique that can block perception. Then forget about it for now. Come deal with the Ninetales first, I'm about to lose control. Minato glanced at the Ninetales bound by Makoto. The Ninetales was also looking at him. This man was far too familiar to it. He often slept beside its Jinchuriki, how could it not recognize him? Therefore, he deserved to die as well. It seemed that, in the Ninetales' view, everyone in the shinobi world deserved to die. After all, it had been at home eating hot pot and singing songs when Uchiha Madara suddenly abducted it. Then it spent decades imprisoned. Anyone in that position would develop endless hatred and want to wipe out all these creatures called humans. Minato said, right now the only option is to seal it again. The problem is, where do we seal it? There's no time to think about that. Go bring Kushina Senpai here first. Help me suppress it, and then we'll think it over slowly. After considering it, Minato agreed. He teleported home and brought his wife over. Absurdly, she was holding Naruto in her arms. Ever since becoming a mother, she had not been willing to let go of her son for even a moment, nor could she bear to leave him alone at home. So you brought little Naruto directly in front of the Ninetales? You go through life and death battles while carrying your son? This was even more outrageous than Uchiha Fugaku. At least when Itachi went to the battlefield, he was already over 4 years old. Naruto had only just been born. People in the shinobi world really know how to play wild. As soon as Kushina arrived, 5 chains burst out from her body. On top of the 2-form seal, they bound the Ninetales with another layer of restraint. Just as the Ninetales was about to open its mouth and curse, a chain shot forward and wrapped its mouth tightly shut. The poor great fox was now filled with grievances. Damn it, this was simply too much bullying of a fox. Sensing the third in the village's shinobi approaching, Minato immediately said, Kushina, deploy the barrier. Don't let them come in. Kushina did not speak, but she quickly expanded the barrier, blocking the reinforcements outside. Something she could accomplish even while half dead was now even easier while she was lively and full of energy. No one knew what Minato was thinking, but before the matter was resolved, he did not want others interfering. There was also the intention of protecting them. After all, the Ninetales was not something ordinary shinobi could deal with. What came next was the troublesome part. The 3 of them looked at each other. Where exactly should this thing be sealed? That was the question. I will post some extra chapters in Patreon, you can check it out. Patreon.com/TitoViller. Chapter 139, Chapter 139, The Night of the Nine. 1,680 words. The Sage of 6 Paths was a partial old father. When he divided the 10 tails into the 9 great-tailed beasts, he endowed Kurama with a special significance. This significance was not only reflected in the differences in the amount of chakra among the tailed beasts, rather, there were essential differences among the 9-tailed beasts themselves. From the 1 tail to the 8 tails, each had obvious chakra attribute characteristics, and their respective abilities were varied. But no matter how one looked at it, aside from the tailed beast ball as their inherent skill, their other techniques were closer to what shinobi understood as bloodline ninjutsu. Only the 9 tails was different. Its nearly inexhaustible chakra was, in essence, closer to the source of the 9-tailed beasts, the 10 tails. In other words, it could be regarded as a smaller 10 tails. This point could be seen from the complete tailed beast mode of the 9 tails Jinchuriki, which was different from that of other Jinchuriki. The 9 tails' excessive power also led to the difficulty of sealing it. For the other tailed beasts, suitable Jinchuriki candidates were relatively easy to find. Only the Jinchuriki who sealed the 9 tails had extremely strict requirements for the candidate. At present, Konohagakure had only confirmed that the physique of the Uzumaki clan was the most suitable. As for other ninja clans, no one dared to try. It was simply too dangerous. If something went wrong, both the Jinchuriki and the 9 tails could be sent off together. Although the tailed beast would revive, during the period before its revival Konohagakure would have a fairly long window without a Jinchuriki. Moreover, the revived 9 tails would not be easy to capture. Where could the present Konohagakure find another god of shinobi? Even the Uzumaki clan, famous throughout the shinobi world for its fuinjutsu, had already been wiped out. The few remaining clan members were scattered across the shinobi world, living in hiding under assumed identities, with their whereabouts unknown. The only two present were the pure-blood Uzumaki Kushina and the mixed-blood Naruto. Although this little guy had not inherited his mother's iconic red hair and instead had the same yellow hair as his father, all three people present here possessed sensory abilities, and they could sense that within the cells of his tiny body there was a vast amount of chakra. In terms of physique, he was actually closer to his mother's Uzumaki clan. This was actually very strange. The sign of the Uzumaki clan's vast chakra was bright red hair, yet this little guy happened not to have it. One could only say that heredity in the shinobi world was too mysterious. Any situation could occur. As the fourth Hokage of Konohagakure, Namake's Minato now had to make a choice. Between his wife and his son, one of the two had to become the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. As for choosing someone else, there was no time to screen candidates now. A group of elders led by the third Hokage would not agree either. Konohagakure could not withstand such a risk. Kushina herself also understood this point. She quickly made her decision. Minato, seal the nine tails into my body instead. Minato was not surprised by that, but things were not that simple now. He asked, Makoto, can the nine tails be sealed directly on the basis of the two-form seal? Makoto's answer was very clear. This fuinjutsu was never developed for sealing a tailed beast. Once the nine tails is sealed inside it, with its powerful chakra, it could easily destroy the balanced structure of the two-form seal. Kushina was resolute. Then cancel the two-form seal. I only need it because the nine tails was extracted from me. Now if the nine tails is sealed back into me, wouldn't I be able to survive all the same? Minato shook his head. There has never been a precedent in the shinobi world of a Jinchuriki surviving after having a tailed beast extracted and then sealed back in. I can't take that risk. Let's try it, Minato. If it doesn't work, we can think of some other way. No, Kushina. It's too dangerous. If it fails, then in a short period of time you'll have to go through the pain of having the nine tails extracted twice. The damage to your body would be too great. If by then even the two-form seal can't save you, then what? You'll die. Are you willing to leave me and Naruto behind and go to the Pure Land alone? Makoto was also thinking about this issue. Minato was right, there was indeed no precedent in the shinobi world for a tailed beast being extracted and then sealed back in, with the Jinchuriki still surviving. Though among the information he possessed, there was one case. That was when, in the original timeline, after the young Ninetales was extracted from Uzumaki Naruto, the Een Ninetales entered his body again and preserved his life. But there were two uncertain factors in this. The first was that by then Naruto had already reconciled with the Ninetales and had become a perfect Jinchuriki. If one wanted to stuff the tailed beast back in to preserve the Jinchuriki's life, did that require the tailed beast's own cooperation? If it did, then just look at the way the Ninetales was glaring at the three of them right now, as if it wanted nothing more than to skewer them all with one claw. It would be a miracle if it agreed. The second uncertain factor was whether, at that time, it was in fact the Een Ninetales that sustained Naruto's life, or whether Otsutsuki Hagoromo had sustained his life with six paths yang power. No one knew these two uncertain factors clearly, and naturally Makoto did not know either. A transmigrator was not a god. He only knew the broad hidden truths behind this world, he was not omniscient. So he also could not agree with Kushina's proposal and use her own life as a gamble. If something went wrong, things might return to their original track, and that would be absurd. Kushina was quick-tempered. Then what do we do, Minato? We can't possibly seal the Ninetales into Naruto, can we? Minato. Makoto did not express any opinion on this. With Konohagakure's current Hokage and the previous Ninetales Jinchuriki both here, it was not his place to make the decision. After seeing her husband's reaction, Kushina froze. Minato, you can't really be. You should know how I lived all these years, right? If Naruto becomes a Jinchuriki, then later he'll have to endure the same fate growing up that I did. Is that really a good thing? Minato naturally understood this, but he still explained firmly, Kushina, you saw today's situation as well. The shinobi world is not as simple as we imagined. The person who attacked you today claimed to be Uchiha Madara. Although I don't believe his words, it still shows that there are many dangers in this world that we don't know about, hidden in the shadows. We need the power of the Nine Tails, and Naruto also needs that power to protect himself and resist unknown enemies. But Naruto has only just been born. He's still so small. As Kushina spoke, she could no longer continue. She only held Naruto tightly in her arms. She knew her husband's words made sense. The shinobi world was far from as simple as it appeared on the surface. Her own experience today was proof of that. But even though the Fuinjutsu developed by Makoto had solved the fate of a Jinchuriki dying after losing their tailed beast, she still did not want her son to walk the same path she had. Minato did not want that either, but he was the Hokage and had to bear the responsibility of being the Kage. Then let me do it. With my current ability, I think I should be able to suppress the Nine Tails. That won't work, Minato. You don't have the physique of our Uzumaki clan. You wouldn't be able to withstand the corrosion of the Nine Tails chakra. Makoto suddenly interjected, there's no time to discuss this. Seal it into me instead. My physique should be able to handle it. After more than half a year of getting along, Kushina had naturally long sensed that Makoto's physique was unusual. Sometimes she had even suspected that he might possess Uzumaki or Senju blood. Because of this, she had even asked Minato to investigate the Higashino family's lineage. The results showed that there was none, his ancestors were all ordinary civilians. In the end, the two concluded that Makoto himself was simply exceptionally gifted and that it had nothing to do with the powerful bloodlines of the shinobi world. In Kushina's view, Makoto could indeed become the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. In terms of physique, he was far stronger than Minato. However, on one side was the disciple to whom she had personally taught Fuinjutsu, and on the other side was her own son. Could she really selfishly allow someone else to bear such a fate? Like Minato, Kushina was, at heart, a bright and kind person. So she could not agree to Makoto's request. In the end, she made her decision. Then Naruto will become the Jinchuriki. Although becoming a Jinchuriki will bring many difficulties while he grows up, the Nine Tails is also a powerful force. Minato is right. Naruto needs this power. I believe that in the future he will use this power to grow into a great ninja. Minato stepped forward and stroked Naruto's head. I believe that too. Makoto was not surprised. With the personalities of this couple, they would indeed not choose him. After thinking for a moment, he proposed, in that case, let's create a real and a fake Jinchuriki. After all, right now only we are here. The people outside only saw the enormous figure of the Nine Tails and cannot sense the specific situation. Perhaps it's worth trying. I will post some extra chapters in Patreon, you can check it out. Patreon.com/TitoViller. Chapter 140, The Night of the Nine. 2098 words. Minato did not understand what Makoto meant and asked in confusion, a real and a fake Jinchuriki? Makoto nodded. Yes, a real and a fake Jinchuriki. We seal the Nine Tails inside Naruto and make him the true Jinchuriki, but only the three of us will know about this. Outwardly, Kushina-senpai will still remain the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. Even if someone in the shinobi world secretly sets their sights on the tailed beasts, it won't be easy for them to succeed. Kushina-senpai herself has the strength to protect herself, unlike Naruto, who needs time to grow. Kushina immediately expressed her agreement. This is a pretty good plan. Minato voiced his doubts. It will be very hard to hide this from anyone who deliberately investigates, won't it? Of course it can't be completely hidden. But ordinary sensory ninja cannot distinguish a Jinchuriki, and the Byakugan is also forbidden from being casually activated inside the village. The only summoning contract that could affect the Nine Tails has already been dissolved by you. So it can still confuse outsiders for quite a long time. What we are trying to gain is precisely this time. That way, Naruto can be protected to the greatest extent possible and allowed to grow up smoothly. That will be enough. Minato, let's do it the way Makoto suggested. At least if I stand at the front, Naruto won't have to bear so many strange looks in the future. Alright. Then we'll begin the sealing now. Minato did not hesitate. He immediately formed hand seals and summoned an altar. Taking Naruto from Kushina's arms, he gently placed him on the altar. Then his hands rapidly formed seals. Fuinjutsu, 8 trigram seal. 2 4-symbol seals nested together in opposite orientations formed the unique 8 trigram seal of the shinobi world. Twisting sealing runes spread across Naruto's abdomen. The moment the sealing technique took shape, it began frantically pulling the Ninetales, trapped by Makoto and Kushina, into the sealing space. It had to be said that sealing techniques were the greatest bug in the shinobi world. Even something as powerful as the Ninetales, once trapped and made the target of a sealing technique, was powerless to resist. As a large amount of the Ninetales chakra poured into Naruto's body, the two of them gradually loosened their suppression of it. At the final moment, the adamantine sealing chains binding the Ninetales' mouth were released, and it finally regained the ability to speak. It roared madly while loudly hurling insults to vent its fury. "You two bastards, and that hateful brat! I'll kill you! This old man will definitely come out and kill you!" The poor big fox could only vent by shouting empty threats, truly impotent rage. Once the sealing was completed, little Naruto felt uncomfortable and began crying while flailing his arms and legs. Kushina quickly picked him up from the altar, heart aching, and tried her best to soothe him. Minato checked the seal and let out a sigh of relief. It looked fairly stable. The situation he had been worried about had not appeared. Makoto also let out a sigh of relief. In the original timeline, Naruto had only half of the young Ninetales sealed inside him, but now he had become the Jinchuriki of the complete Ninetales. Fortunately, aside from having Uzumaki blood, he was also the reincarnation of Asura's chakra, so even the entire Ninetales could be suppressed with ease. The reason Minato of the original timeline had chosen that option was not because he did not want to seal the whole Ninetales, but because he had no choice. The Shinigami summoned by the dead demon consuming seal was not going to work for free. If the Ninetales had not been split into two, the Shinigami would have taken the entire Ninetales away together with Minato in one package. Minato formed hand seals and created a shadow clone. "Kushina, I'll take Naruto home first. We can't let anyone discover that he's here." Although Kushina was very reluctant, she still let go and handed Naruto over to Minato, watching them disappear before her eyes. Konoha's support ninja were blocked outside by the huge adamantine sealing chains barrier. The place Makoto had chosen was a forest dense with trees, so they could only see the Ninetales' massive figure. They could neither see nor hear what was happening in the middle of the forest. Makoto had kept his Sage Mode perception active the entire time, closely monitoring the movements around them to prevent any white Zetsu from coming to spy. Ever since he had become able to enter Sage Mode, he had occasionally sensed those things both inside and outside Konoha, but had always pretended not to notice. As for Black Zetsu, that fellow should be busy saving Obito's life at this moment. Feeling the residual Ninetales chakra surging within the barrier, Makoto said, "Kushina-senpai, please follow my instructions, form the hand seals, and circulate your chakra." Kushina did not hesitate and immediately did as she was told. As she completed the hand seals, the yin-yang pattern of the two-formed seal on her lower abdomen began to rotate. The Ninetales chakra within the barrier seemed to be drawn toward it, separating into two streams, one darker and one lighter, that surged into the two nodes of the seal. When it was about enough, Makoto said, "That's enough." At his words, Kushina ended her control. The seal stopped rotating and no longer absorbed the Ninetales chakra. She did not quite understand. "Makoto, what's the use of absorbing this chakra? Won't it affect the seal?" The dispersed chakra does not contain much of the Ninetales' main consciousness. As long as you do not absorb a large amount, it will not affect the sealing effect. As for its use, remember the hand seal sequence just now. If you form the seals in reverse, you can release this chakra as a simple means of attack. That way, to outsiders, you will be the true Ninetales Jinchuriki. Minato sighed in admiration. "Makoto, you've thought this through very thoroughly. When you put on an act, of course you have to see it through to the end. After Kushina memorized the method to control the two-form seal, her thoughts flew back home. Minato, I'm going to withdraw the barrier. Wait, Kushina. Let's wait a little longer. There are some things I want to ask Makoto. Outside the barrier, the third Hokage was anxiously waiting for developments together with many Konoha ninja. When he saw the enormous nine tails gradually shrinking as it was sealed, he finally let out a sigh of relief, thinking to himself that Minato had finally resolved this trouble. The other Konoha ninja felt the same. If it had not been for protecting Konoha, no one wanted to fight the nine tails. The brief rampage it had caused inside the village earlier had already left a shadow of fear in many people's hearts. Jiro and Yuya were the same, but aside from that, they were even more worried about Makoto's safety, wishing they could rush inside immediately to check on the situation. But although the nine tails had disappeared, the barrier set up by the adamantine sealing chains still stood firm and solid, blocking anyone from approaching. Inside the barrier, the altar had already vanished. Minato looked somewhat exhausted. He sat on the ground without caring about appearances and asked, Makoto, I've already held my own child in my arms, and the nine tails problem has also been resolved. So it's time for you to say what your suggestion is. This was a topic from a few nights earlier, when he had sought out Makoto for a chat. Minato-senpai, becoming Hokage is the dream of every child in the village, but for the vast majority of people, it is only a dream. You are different, you realized that dream. So after you took the seat of Hokage, compared with the dream you once had, what differences are there between the two? A difference, huh? Minato recalled his former thoughts. I dreamed of becoming Hokage, protecting the companions in the village, and leading Konoha to become stronger. I accomplished the first half. I protected the village during the war. But as for the second half, I feel that the village does not seem to actually be under my leadership. The village's main authority is still in the hands of the third and several others. Unimportant matters can be carried out according to your ideas, but any change involving the village's power structure will be regarded as an extreme idea and will not be permitted, right? Makoto, you really are a straightforward guy. But you're right, that's exactly how things are. Minato loved his wife very much, so he never spoke about work troubles at home, lest Kushina become unhappy. He was truly a warm-hearted man. Otherwise, at such a young age, he would never have made Kushina so completely infatuated that she firmly decided she would marry no one but him. After hearing their conversation, Kushina felt that her man had been bullied. Minato, why didn't you say so earlier? That old fellow, the third, I should have burned his house down with one fire so he'd stop refusing to retire properly and constantly making trouble for you. Ah, Kushina, things aren't that simple. Let's hear Makoto's suggestion first. Makoto continued giving his advice bluntly. The core of the third's power, aside from himself, consists of Shimura Danzo as his assistant, and the advisors Mitokado Hamura and Utatane Koharu. Minato-senpai, if you want to become a Hokage who truly holds power, you must dismantle their alliance. It would be best to start with Danzo. That man has the most problems attached to him. We can gather evidence and remove him first. Then use him as the breakthrough point to extend the fire to the two advisors and force them into retirement. At that point, only the third will remain. He will naturally see the situation clearly and withdraw accordingly. Minato thought about it. With the ANBU forces currently cultivated by Gekko Komomi, together with Higashino Makoto and himself, it might indeed be possible to do it. But he did not want to proceed that way. That would essentially amount to a different kind of coup. If handled poorly, it could turn into a civil conflict within Konoha, and that was not something he wanted to see. Why would the Hokage rebel? Makoto, they have devoted their entire lives to Konoha. They are our role models. Your suggestion is too radical. Minato-senpai, struggles for power have always been like this, there is no room for sentiment. Besides, we would use lawful and legitimate means. We wouldn't resort to assassination. How is that radical? Minato shook his head. Makoto's suggestion simply did not suit his character. Do you have any better suggestions? Makoto thought for a moment and asked, Minato-senpai, between your family and the village, which one is more important in your heart? If it had been before, Minato might have said they were equally important. But after tonight, when his wife had almost died, something in him had changed. Perhaps I really am not a qualified Hokage. In my heart, Kushina and Naruto are a little more important. Makoto was not surprised. Since that's how you feel, then retreat in order to advance. Step down from the Hokage position for now and go home to accompany your wife and child. Retreat in order to advance? What do you mean? The thick-skinned Kushina was already dizzy. Retreat in order to advance, what kind of thing was that? What exactly were they talking about? Makoto explained, since you're unwilling to confront the third and the others directly, and you also don't want to remain Hokage while accomplishing nothing, then simply take advantage of today's incident. Use recovering from injuries as a reason to temporarily withdraw and take a step back for the third to see. Following Makoto's reasoning, Minato said, use this method to express a protest to the third? Yes. If he truly has Konoha's interests at heart, then while exercising the Hokage's authority in your place, he should resolve the problems left over from his own tenure and return to you a Hokage's seat without restraints. That way he can also step down with dignity. Kushina asked, what if that old man doesn't do what you said, Makoto? Wouldn't Minato end up losing the Hokage position? It doesn't matter. If he doesn't want dignity for himself, then we'll help him obtain it. I will post some extra chapters in Patreon, you can check it out. Patreon.com/TitoViller. Chapter 141, Chapter 141, Obito, some bastard is exposing my identity. 1866 words. The third Hokage was Jiraiya's teacher, and Jiraiya was Minato's teacher. Danzo and the other two were the third Hokage's old classmates, people who had long been in the same camp as him. With Minato's sunny personality, he fundamentally had no desire to clash with them head-on. Discord among the leadership was a major taboo for a shinobi village, just look at the mess Kirigakure had become. If the time came, the ninja of Konoha would begin, whether voluntarily or under pressure, to take sides because of the split among the upper ranks. They would divide into several factions, and with a little stirring by people with ulterior motives, it would easily evolve into internal turmoil within Konoha. Once civil war broke out, the other forces of the shinobi world would absolutely not miss the chance to beat up the rich man. The flames of the Third Shinobi World War, which had only just been extinguished, might very well be reignited. No, not might. War would certainly break out. In essence, the war had never truly ended. Kumogakure and Kirigakure had not yet signed peace agreements with Konoha, and even if they did, it would be useless, one sheet of paper could not restrain anyone. With Minato's intelligence, he quickly deduced how the situation would unfold, and those developments were precisely the outcomes he least wished to see. If the struggle for power between both sides were to plunge the entire shinobi world into chaos, then he would rather resign from the position of Hokage. To be honest, he had held the post for less than a year. Unlike the third Hokage, who had remained in power for decades and had already transformed from a hero among shinobi into a creature of power, Minato did not feel much attachment to power. Since being Hokage brought him no real satisfaction, he might as well adopt Makoto's suggestion, advance by retreating. First go home and spend time with his wife and child, living a happy little family life, and use the remaining time to train and improve his strength. Judging from the events of tonight, quite a few mysterious figures were lurking within the shinobi world. If he did not work harder to improve his strength, what would he rely on in the future to protect his wife and child? As for the position of Hokage, that would depend on the third Hokage's own choice. If he wished to continue doing the job, then he could simply keep doing it. If the other party truly was willing to clear away the obstacles for him, then he would also be willing to once again shoulder the name and responsibility of Hokage and stake his life on it. Whether he served as Hokage or not, he would continue to protect the village, his family, and his companions, and persist in the dream he had held since his youth. Perhaps, this was the true will of fire. Once he made his decision and let go of his obsession with the Hokage position, Minato suddenly felt an unprecedented sense of ease, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. He let out a long breath and pulled Kushina into his arms. Let's carry out the method Makoto suggested. It'll give me time to stay with Kushina and take good care of Naruto together. As for everything else, we'll leave it to the third Hokage. I believe he'll make the right choice. Makoto, hard to say. In the third Hokage's position, there are some things he cannot simply do just because he wants to. He'll face the same problem you did. The third Hokage himself was not actually that dark. The problem lay in his personality. He was not ruthless or decisive enough, and he would be pushed forward by the interest groups behind him. When the time came, he would not even be able to step down even if he wanted to. But Makoto did not care either. The shinobi world was not his previous life. In a supernatural world, strength was the foundation. No matter how well you played at power struggles, when the time came, someone would just flip the whole table over on you. Play the game of power? What a joke. Now, Minato had also come to see things clearly. I'm still willing to trust the third Hokage. Kushina was very happy. Right. Let's focus on Naruto first. Let that rotten old man worry about Hokage matters. Minato pulled her even tighter into his arms. I'll listen to you. Come to think of it, now that I'm no longer a Jinchuriki, I'll never have to worry about pregnancy and childbirth again. Then let's have several more. It's already decided that Naruto will take your surname, Uzumaki. The next child will use my surname. No problem. Then I'll withdraw the barrier and let them come in. Who could have imagined that, in such a short span of time, after the life and death separation brought on by having the nine tails ripped out, the mood would suddenly veer into marital affection? They had even already begun discussing the surname of their next child. Could it be that you wanted to have a Namikaze Menma? The cloying smell of love that these two lovebirds were spreading through the air dealt severe critical damage to a single man. Was Makoto the sort of person, like Jiraiya, who only knew how to avoid things? No, he was not. It seemed he had to give them a little revenge. Who told you to flaunt your love in front of him? He stopped her. Kushina-senpai, wait a moment. Kushina halted her attempt to withdraw the adamantine sealing chains. Makoto, is there something else you want to say? Yes. Minato-senpai, did you previously say that mysterious masked man claimed to be Uchiha Madara? Yes, but I do not think he is that legendary shinobi. I do not think so either. Minato-senpai should know that my sensory ability is very strong. At the instant Wood Release ran wild on his body, I seemed to sense a somewhat familiar chakra fluctuation. This person is someone we both know. Who is it, X2? Your disciple, Uchiha Obito. Kushina was stunned. She simply could not believe it was Obito. After all, she liked that child very much and treated him like a younger brother. How could he possibly have come to sabotage her seal while she was giving birth? That would have been the same as killing her with his own hands. How could it be Obito? After his shock, Minato quickly regained his composure. After carefully analyzing it in his mind, he said, perhaps your sensing really is correct. You have to remember that after the Battle of Canopy Bridge, we never found Obito's body. Kakashi and Rin also did not personally see him die. They only saw him buried under earth and stone. At that time, he must have been saved by the second mysterious person who appeared tonight. That person has that ability, and earlier he saved him from my hands once already. As for how Obito survived back then, I think it has a great deal to do with the first Hokage's Wood Release cells. That also explains why Obito can use Wood Release. Yes, that must be it. With his clever little head, Minato quickly connected the whole chain of events. As for the first Hokage's Wood Release cells, as Hokage he naturally had the authority to consult some of Konoha's most highly classified archives. At the time, after learning only a little about it, it had nearly shattered the worldview of someone as sunny as him. He had never expected that the third Hokage, whom he had always regarded as the perfect Hokage, had actually agreed behind the scenes to such cruel human experimentation, all in order to recreate the so-called secret art of Wood Release. From that moment on, the beautiful filter he had once placed over the title of Hokage was completely gone. Makoto asked in confusion. The first Hokages would release cells? That should be something belonging to Konoha, right? Why would they be in the hands of a mysterious person? Since Obito claims to be Madara, then he must have some connection with Uchiha Madara. Considering the relationship between Madara and the first Hokage, it would be normal for him to possess some of his cells. If Obito's would release comes from Madara, then does that mean Madara is truly still alive? And that the second mysterious person, like Obito, is also one of Madara's subordinates? If not, then it means that either Obito or the person behind the one who saved him still has connections with Konoha. Someone inside our village colluded with an external enemy and handed the wood release cells over to them. As Minato analyzed things up to this point, the image of that fellow Danzo naturally popped into his mind. It could not be helped, his preconceived impression was simply too strong. He had also suspected the Uchiha clan, but he quickly dismissed that idea in his own mind. People like the third Hokage and the others kept such strict watch over the Uchiha that they would never allow them to come into contact with the first Hokage's cells. At the same time, the more he analyzed, the more he felt that the waters of both the shinobi world and Konoha were truly muddy. This only strengthened his resolve to step back for the time being. Sometimes it was easier to see things clearly from outside the game. Sitting in the Hokage's seat, entangled by endless affairs, some things might simply be blocked from his sight by people with ulterior motives. Kushina still refused to believe it. Obito was so kind, he wouldn't harm me. People can change, Kushina, Minato sighed. The most important person in Obito's heart was never us. It was Rin. And Rin is already dead. As his sensei, I failed to protect her. Perhaps it's because of that Obito now hates us so deeply. Minato-senpai, should we tell Kakashi about this? You know what state he's in right now. If we tell him, it might bring about some change in him. After thinking it over for a moment, Minato said firmly, for now, no. Including the third Hokage, Obito's identity, like Naruto's status as a Jinchuriki, should be known only to the three of us. Understood? As for Kakashi, leave that to Kushina and me. That is our responsibility as his elders. All right. Kushina, remove the barrier. It's time for us to lie down. They truly did need to lie down. Kushina was genuinely exhausted, while Makoto and Minato were simply worn out. But after the barrier disappeared, Minato went so far as to place a seal on himself. In an instant, he looked as if he had fallen gravely ill, as though his very foundation had been damaged and he would need several years of recovery before he could regain his strength. This so-called little son of Konoha actually had quite a sly side to him. I will post some extra chapters in Patreon, you can check it out. Patreon.com/TitoViller. Chapter 142, Chapter 142, The Third Hokage Feels the Weight of Responsibility. 1856 words. The adamantine ceiling chains barrier that had been blocking the Konoha ninja finally disappeared. At the first moment, the third Hokage led people rushing into the center of the forest. Then everyone saw that on the patch of open ground pressed out by the Ninetales lay 3 bodies. 2 adults and 1 child. When Makoto lay down, he had quietly pulled a little distance away from the other 2. Even when playing dead, sticking together like that could easily get one struck by lightning. He had to stay away from danger. When the third Hokage saw this situation, his heart tightened, and an ominous premonition rose in his mind. The ones lying there were the youngest Hokage in Konoha, the Ninetales Jinchuriki, and the most talented ninja of Konoha's new generation. If they had died, the blow to Konoha would be unimaginable. Fortunately, the situation was not as bad as it looked. After the medical nin stepped forward to check them, he said, "Third Hokage-sama, they're all fine." The third Hokage let out a sigh of relief. Stepping forward, he helped Minato up and asked, "Fourth Hokage, how is the Ninetales?" Minato felt a little uncomfortable. "Third Hokage-sama, the combined weight of the 3 of us in your heart is still less than the Ninetales? People are like that. Once you hold an opinion about someone in your heart, no matter what they say, you can always pick out faults in their words." But he did not show it. Forcing a bright smile onto his face, he said, "I did not fail the trust placed in me, third Hokage. The Nine Tails has been sealed back again. That's good. You've worked hard, Minato. Are you all right? Minato glanced at the people around them. The third Hokage understood Minato had something important to say to him, so he ordered everyone to move a little farther away to give them space to talk. The other ninja, together with the medical team, carried Makoto and Kushina to the side to take care of them. Seeing this, Minato replied, Makoto should be fine. He just used too much chakra. Kushina had the Nine Tails extracted. Although Makoto and I sealed it back together, Kushina's body suffered severe damage. It may take a long time for her to recover. According to the report from those who went to investigate the childbirth site, all the ANBU guarding the perimeter were killed, even Biwako. Hiruzen was somewhat sorrowful. After all, your wife is only weakened, but mine is truly dead. But he was the third Hokage of Konoha, so he quickly put away his grief and continued asking, what exactly happened? Why did the Nine Tails break through the seal and run out? A mysterious man attacked us when Naruto was born. Like me, he can use space-time ninjutsu, and he's even more skilled at it. He can move through barriers freely without relying on markers. The third Hokage's expression darkened. It must be someone from the Uchiha clan. When the Nine Tails appeared in the village, someone saw Tomo patterns in its eyes similar to the Sharingan. When the Nine Tails was controlled by Obito, Tomo did indeed flash in its eyes for an instant. But they quickly dispersed and vanished. In addition, that fellow's eyes were too large and his body too tall, so the few people who saw it in the first moment could not confirm it clearly. If its eyes had truly displayed obvious Sharingan patterns, Konoha's attitude toward the Uchiha would not merely be suspicion, it would be a charge backed by solid evidence. If what awaited the Uchiha clan in the future was not exclusion, then it would be the collective blow of all Konoha. But only the Sharingan could control a tailed beast, this was common knowledge, so their clan became the primary target of suspicion. When yellow mud falls into your pants, even if it is not shit, it is still taken for shit. Minato drew a clear distinction, it wasn't someone from the village. He claimed to be Uchiha Madara. What? Uchiha Madara? The third Hokage was stunned. That was far more terrifying than the Uchiha in the village. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Madara is already dead. I do not believe it either, but he had the Nine Tails summoning contract, which is why he was able to control the Nine Tails so easily. Fortunately, I already removed that contract. I was also severely wounded while fighting the person who came to receive him. That person was even more mysterious. He could move freely underground without using earth release, and he could not be detected by sensory ninjutsu. It's good that you removed it. As for who this so-called Uchiha Madara and his accomplice really are, I will have people investigate. Minato, focus on recuperating. You do not need to worry. I am afraid that, like Kushina, I will need a long time to recover. I will be unable to carry out the duties of the Hokage. I will have to entrust what comes next to the third Hokage. Do not worry. With me here, you do not need to concern yourself with anything else. The main task now is to recover from your injuries. A mysterious man suspected of being Uchiha Madara, possessing a spacetime ninjutsu even more convenient than the Flying Thunder God. An even more mysterious accomplice with him. The Jinchuriki severely wounded. The fourth Hokage severely wounded. One matter after another, all concerning Konoha's future, suddenly pressed down onto Hiruzen's shoulders, making him feel the weight of responsibility so heavily that he did not even have time to mourn his wife. But he could not fall. He was Konoha's third Hokage. He had to step forward and lead everyone out of this hardship. Especially now, with both the new Hokage and the Jinchuriki having lost their fighting strength, he would likely have to come back out in person to stabilize people's hearts. On the other side, Higashino Jiro looked at the medical nin and asked, "How is my son?" "He'll be fine, right?" Makoto looked half dead. "Father, I'm fine. I just overused my chakra." The medical nin also confirmed it, that is indeed the situation, Jiro Jonin. You do not need to worry. He just needs to rest for a few days. With Makoto's medical skill and strength, fooling the medical team was very easy. He did not need to be like Minato and use a technique to seal away his chakra as well. Yuzuki Yuya was also at the side, comforting him. I told you he'd be fine. You should trust Makoto's strength. Stop talking and hurry up and take him back to rest. Right now, this guy is a hero who saved his comrades, moved the Nine Tails away, and, together with the fourth Hokage, sealed the Nine Tails back again. Nothing can happen to him. Okay. Then I'll leave this place to you. After saying that, Jiro carried his son on his back and headed home. Nine Tails or not, how could it be more important than his own son? There were not many people who could enter this place together with the third Hokage. Other than the medical team, all of them were Konoha's elite jonin. Although the others also wanted very much to step forward and help, they were blocked at the outer perimeter. They craned their necks in anticipation, hoping to learn the outcome. Lying on his father's back, Makoto passed by a masked ANBU and asked, Sensei, hey 8 and the others are all fine, right? Kumomi nodded. Don't worry, they're all fine. That's good. After saying that, Makoto gave a thumbs up to Kakashi and Guy beside him. Might Guy returned the gesture with the same thumbs up, flashing a bright grin. Kakashi silently nodded. At the same time, he clenched his fists and quietly asked, Makoto, how are Sensei and the others? They're not in danger, right? Don't worry, Kakashi-senpai. They're all fine. That's good. Thank you, Makoto. The moment the Nine Tails appeared, he thought misfortune had fallen on him once again. After losing his father and 2 teammates, was he going to lose his teacher's family as well? Fortunately, none of that happened. He would not have to endure the pain of losing important people around him once again. But Makoto calling him senpai made him feel deeply ashamed. When everyone had fallen into danger, it was this junior, who was even younger than him, who had stood with Sensei to resist the mysterious man, moved the Nine Tails away, and saved Konoha, while he himself could only stand aside and watch. What kind of Konoha genius was he? It seemed he could not remain dispirited any longer. From now on, he had to train properly. Next time, if danger appeared again, he would definitely stand in front of Sensei and his wife. He could not become, like his own name suggested, a lonely scarecrow in the fields, watching events happen while being powerless to do anything. At the side, Kurenai was still arguing with her father, blaming him for stopping everyone from stepping forward to help. The bootlicker Asuma was not by her side. He had probably gone home to see his mother one last time. With the danger resolved, Yuhi Shinku's attitude was no longer as rigid as before. He was simply advising the hot-blooded new generation to go back and wait for news. This jonin, who should have died on the night of the Nine Tails, was now alive and well because of Makoto's intervention. There were many others like him. For example, the parents of Umano Irika had not died either, they were only injured. As for those ninja and civilians who had died, Makoto would not place the responsibility on himself. That was purely the foolish behavior of pointless mental self-torment. Makoto remained the same as before. He would not forcibly interfere with other people's destinies. But once he became stronger, the destinies of some people would naturally change because of him. That was the role of the strong. There was no need to deliberately pursue it, the world would naturally change because of one's actions. After entering Konoha with his father, Makoto saw that the center of the village had already become ruins. Between the ruins and the Hokage Rock, the Nine-Tailed beast ball had plowed out a deep trench, reducing every building along its path to fragments. And that was only the collateral damage caused as the tailed beast ball passed by. If something like that had exploded inside Konoha, half the village, young and old, would have ascended to heaven that very night. Fortunately, Minato and Makoto had transferred the disaster away. Compared with Konoha's overall size, the current scale of destruction was not too severe. But no matter what, the Nine Tails rampage in Konoha could not be concealed. It was unknown whether the other major ninja villages would have any special thoughts once they learned the news. But none of that concerned Makoto now. At the moment, he felt extremely sleepy, as if his body's instincts were urging him to rest quickly. I will post some extra chapters in Patreon, you can check it out. Patreon.com/TitoViller. Chapter 143, Constant Sage Mode. 2040 words. Because of Makoto's involvement, the destruction and casualties Konoha suffered after the Ninetales broke through the seal were far smaller than in the original timeline. Damage to buildings was nothing serious. With the ninja world's infrastructure capabilities and the efficiency with which shinobi worked, it would not take long to restore everything to its previous state. As for the casualties among civilians and shinobi, they served as a reminder to Konoha's leadership that even with peace having arrived, they could not afford to rest easy. The ninja world still contained quite a few conspirators hiding in the shadows. The last time the Ninetales had attacked Konoha was several decades ago, when Uchiha Madara did it. At that time, the first Hokage had stopped the danger outside Konoha. Aside from a few elderly people who had seen the battle from afar back then, the vast majority of Konoha's current residents only knew that their village possessed the strongest tailed beast, but did not understand its terror. Today they had witnessed it. It was a monster completely beyond human resistance, something capable of destroying Konoha with ease. The villagers who had lost relatives and friends needed somewhere to vent their anger, and where that anger would be directed depended on how the leadership explained this incident. At the same time, a disturbance as large as the Ninetales' rampage could not possibly be concealed. Konoha also had to guard against possible movements from the other four great ninja villages. The Higashino residence was not located in the center of Konoha, so it had not suffered much damage. However, Megumi was currently still hiding in the shelter with the others and was not at home. After returning home with his son, Jiro asked, "Makoto, are you sure you don't need to go to the hospital?" "No need, father. I just need to rest for a few days and I'll be fine. Don't worry, I'm a medical ninja, I know my body's condition very well." "Is that so? Then I'm relieved." After saying this, the worry in Jiro's eyes and brows had not eased much. "If you're worried about Mom, go bring her back. I can take care of myself, and the danger has already passed." Jiro hesitated for a moment, but in the end decided, "All right, I'll go bring your mother back. If you get sleepy, go to bed early." After his father left, Makoto began carefully sensing the drowsiness coming from his body. In this strange world, any abnormal situation was something worth being vigilant about. Then he discovered that it was merely a normal signal of sleepiness. It could be controlled. If he did not want to sleep, he could simply ignore it, and in any case it would not suddenly make him fall into uncontrollable sleep. After washing up, Makoto lay on the bed and decided to study what exactly was going on. Maybe the old man of the 6 paths had something to chat with him about. Makoto had always fallen asleep very quickly. Once he closed his eyes and completely relaxed his body, his consciousness soon broke free from the body's restraints as usual and floated in the air. Then he realized he had been mistaken. The old man of the 6 paths was not that omnipotent. He was not some great being who could ride along the timeline and know everything. Such an existence did not exist in this world. Gamamaru's so-called prophetic dreams were not, and even the legendary Otsutsuki god Shirbai, whose soul had transcended the current world, was not either. Makoto's drowsiness came from his own consciousness body. It was an instinct arising from his subconscious. The moment Makoto's one-of-a-kind consciousness body appeared in the outside world, it immediately once again sensed the multicolored streams of energy permeating space. Among them, the red natural energy was exceptionally violent, rampaging like a furious dragon and rolling through as it assimilated the other energies. After observing them for all these years, Makoto had already more or less understood what the differently colored natural energies belonged to. The dim red energy stream was natural energy tainted by the god tree of the Otsutsuki clan. The god tree was the Ten-Tails, and the Ten-Tails was later divided by Otsutsuki Hagoromo into the 9-tailed beasts. The 9-tails was the tailed beast closest to the Ten-Tails. Tonight, after breaking through the seal and appearing in the outside world, it was like a meteor crashing into the sea, stirring up a violent upheaval in natural energy. This kind of energy was very difficult for humans to use. Its violent aura could easily crush human reason and turn them into monsters that knew only slaughter. Yugo was someone born with a constitution capable of absorbing this kind of energy, so once he lost control, he would lose his reason, be left with only the desire to kill, and at the same time his body would become monstrous, displaying the characteristics of the god tree. Later, after Orochimaru obtained Yugo, he used his ability as the basis to develop the Heaven and Earth Curse Seal system that could resurrect himself. Whether those who accepted the Curse Seal could survive or not depended entirely on luck. The green, purple, and cyan natural energies belonged to the three sage regions. If one came into contact with them rashly without undergoing specialized fusion training, the body would run the risk of mutating into something non-human. All of these natural energies had very high inertia. They coexisted with humans in the ninja world, and there would be no particular effect between them. If humans wanted to train in sage mode, they first had to possess extremely high baseline qualifications. Only then, under the guidance of the special methods of the three sage regions, could they sense them. Among them, the one with the highest inertia was the original white natural energy, but at this moment, under the impact of the red natural energy, even it had passively begun to grow active. These kinds of natural energy were not living beings and had no autonomous consciousness, only the most basic primitive instinct to assimilate one another. The instant Makoto's consciousness body appeared in the outside world, the white natural energy seemed to have found a vent and frantically rushed into his consciousness body. Afterward, once it had been transformed by the consciousness body and stripped of its powers of decomposition and annihilation, it continued surging downward and was completely absorbed by the body. Makoto had been carefully observing and sensing this absorption process the entire time. Today's situation was different from usual. If he suddenly received such an enormous amount of white energy, in the past he likely would not have been able to hold on for even 10 minutes before having to stop on his own. If he continued, his consciousness would risk being annihilated. But now the powers of decomposition and annihilation within these white natural energies had been greatly consumed while resisting the assimilation of the violent red natural energy, which instead made it easier for Makoto to receive them. As time continued to pass, at a certain moment, the strengthening of Makoto's body by the white natural energy seemed to reach a critical point. The energy within his body began to grow highly active. Then, under the washing of the pure natural energy, large amounts of chakra began to dissipate outward into the surrounding space. This chakra was expelled by the white natural energy, like garbage and impurities thrown out of the body. Chakra was the special energy formed by the fusion of a ninja's physical energy and spiritual energy. It was used to perform ninjutsu, taijutsu, and genjutsu, and was the fundamental power of every ninja. And now, this fundamental power was just being discarded like that? Makoto fell into thought and carefully sensed the chakra that had been expelled while remaining in the state of his consciousness body. In theory, every portion of a ninja's chakra contained their own spiritual will. That was why they could control chakra to perform various ninjutsu, and even split off different kinds of clones that carried their will and could act and think independently. But Makoto could not sense any mental fluctuation or will belonging to himself within this chakra. That chakra had clearly come out of his own body, yet it seemed as though it did not belong to him at all. What the hell was the difference between this and a man returning home only to discover that another unfamiliar man had been secretly living there all along? In this home, no, in this body, were some of the things inside it really his? Maybe they truly were not. Makoto suddenly thought of something. Originally, there had been no chakra in the ninja world. It was after the Otsutsuki clan planted the god tree that the primordial natural energy was transformed into chakra. Afterward, Otsutsuki Kagaya ate the chakra fruit and then gave birth to the two brothers Hagoromo and Hamura. The chakra used by all ninjas in the ninja world now, theoretically, was something diffused from that family. In other words, everyone only possessed the right to synthesize and use it, but did not possess the ultimate authority over it. The ultimate authority rested in the hands of the rabbit goddess, Kagaya, or rather, in the hands of the Otsutsuki clan. And the chakra expelled from his body might contain information belonging to the Otsutsuki clan. It was a seed-like power residing within the human body, growing and developing with the help of a ninja's physical and spiritual energy. The seed within Makoto's body, however, had been flushed out under the washing of the enormous amount of white natural energy. That raised a question: without the seed, would he still be able to use chakra in the future? The answer was yes. From the perspective of the consciousness body, the perception of time was different from that of the material world. Without noticing it, an entire night had passed, and the sky had begun to brighten. Makoto, who was lying on the bed, suddenly woke up. His perception had become sharper than before. Without deliberately activating his sensory ability, he could already sense that in the house's master bedroom his parents were sleeping soundly. Makoto did not disturb them. Instead, he carefully sensed the changes in this body, most importantly checking whether he could still use chakra. With a slight movement of his thoughts, his spiritual energy and physical energy rapidly fused together. A massive amount of chakra was refined and surged freely through the chakra pathways. Not only that, he even felt a sense of relief, as if he had removed a weight that had been tied to his body all along. His control over the chakra was effortless, like moving his own arm, exceptionally easy, almost instinctive. Makoto suddenly understood, the chakra inside his body now no longer carried any residual will of the Otsutsuki clan. It was extraordinary energy that completely belonged to him. Afterward, he tried to enter Sage mode, but unfortunately failed. However, he was not disappointed. He raised his hand and condensed a water mirror, and water attribute chakra quickly formed, flowing more smoothly than before. Makoto looked at himself in the mirror and was startled to find that the Sage mode markings on his forehead were unusually clear and had not disappeared even though he had stopped absorbing the white natural energy. In other words, he no longer needed to deliberately enter Sage mode. At any moment, he was already in Sage mode. Nor did he need to deliberately absorb the white natural energy. Now, at every moment, he was in harmonious interaction with it. In just one night, he had entered the third stage of the natural energy training he had planned, constant Sage mode. From now on, any of his methods would be senjutsu. This was truly a delightful improvement. Karama-sama was a good person. At this moment, Makoto almost wanted to run to Minato's house, pull the big fox out of Naruto's stomach, and give it a fierce kiss. Thank you, Nine Tails. I will post some extra chapters in Patreon, you can check it out. Patreon.com/TitoViller. Chapter 144, Chapter 144, a classic line that must be tasted. 2,101 words. While Makoto went home to sleep, Hiruzen confirmed that Minato and his wife were safe. He then handed the remaining matters over to the Jonin class to clean up, while he himself returned to the Hokage building together with Midokado Hamura and Utatane Koharu. Although these two had rather poor combat strength now, they still possessed the strength of Jonin at the very least, and their concern for the village was not false, so naturally they participated as well. Even the retired Akimichi Torafu, who had been living quietly at home, once again donned his armor and went into battle. However, before anyone could contribute much, the situation had already been resolved by Minato and Makoto. Seeing that the village's crisis had passed, Old Master Torafu returned home. He had never been interested in the affairs of his old classmates and did not involve himself in them. In any case, the three clans of Ino, Shika, and Sho were one body. Whoever became Hokage could not do without their support, so troublesome matters could simply be left to Narashikaku to handle. Inside a small conference room in the Hokage Tower, Hiruzen and the other two gathered. Koharu asked with concern, "Hiruzen, shouldn't you go back first and check on Bawako?" The third Hokage took a hard drag from his pipe. Let the eldest at home handle the arrangements. Right now, the village's affairs are more important. I believe Biwako, in the Pure Land, will understand me. But Asuma already harbors a great deal of resentment toward you. If his mother dies and you still don't return, I'm afraid the relationship between you father and son will become even harder to mend. What does he understand? If one day he can understand me, that will be his true growth. Koharu and Hamura exchanged a glance and said no more. That was enough of a reminder. After all, it was Monkey's family matter. At the same time, they admired how their old friend could work himself to such an extent for the sake of the village. Not long afterward, a gloomy-faced Danzo also walked in. The Konoha F4 had gathered and began discussing the aftermath of the Ninetales rampage. For small matters, hold a big meeting, for big matters, hold a small meeting. The ninja world followed the same routine. Koharu immediately questioned him. Danzo, something this big happened in the village, where did you and your root ninja run off to? Danzo showed not the slightest trace of shame on his face. I went to the Uchiha clan and ordered Uchiha Fugaku to withdraw all members of the police force back to the clan compound. My root and I were responsible for keeping watch over them. Is there a problem? Hearing this, Kohara said nothing more. Hamura spoke instead. Your actions weren't wrong. The Sharingan must absolutely not approach the Nine Tails itself. It's far too dangerous. The third Hokage smoked his old pipe and did not think it improper either. Even though he knew Danzo could not suppress the Uchiha and was certainly acting under his name again, he still had no objection. On the matter of dealing with the Uchiha, the four of them were consistent, only the attitude differed between moderation and radicalism. Hiruzen and the other two belonged to the moderate faction. While guarding against the Uchiha in accordance with their teacher's last wishes, they still regarded them as part of the village. Danzo, on the other hand, was a pure radical, wishing he could wipe out this inherently evil clan altogether. Seeing the matter set aside, Danzo asked, "What exactly happened? Why did the Nine Tails break free? What was the fourth Hokage doing?" As for this matter, Hamura and Kohara did not know. Minato had only told the third Hokage, so they all turned their eyes toward their old friend. Hiruzen then relayed to the three of them what Minato had told him. The moment the three old fogies heard Uchiha Madara's name, they immediately bristled like startled cats. Kohara looked utterly disbelieving. Impossible. How could it possibly be Madara? He died long ago, and the sensei's records never mentioned anything about him knowing spacetime ninjutsu. Hamura did not believe it either. It definitely couldn't be Madara, but it is certainly someone from the Uchiha clan. Unfortunately, Madara's corpse had been taken away by Tobirama back then, and afterward the matter had simply been left unresolved. Who knew where it had been hidden? Even if they wanted to dig up the grave to verify it, they could not even find the place. Danzo's attitude, however, was extremely firm. It must be a force secretly trained by the Uchiha clan. I said long ago that this was an evil clan. Today's events prove that my judgment was correct. The third Hokage explained, Minato believes that person did not come from the village. You all know that Madara left the village back then and disappeared for a period of time. Perhaps this is bloodline he left behind somewhere in the shinobi world. Danzo retorted, what does that brat Minato know? In my view, because of his relationship with Fugaku's family, he has even lost his most basic judgment. Monkey, leave this matter to me. I guarantee I'll drag those two mysterious people out from within the Uchiha clan for you. Danzo, I trust Minato's judgment, and I also trust that the Uchiha clan will not betray the village. Your methods will only truly force them onto Konoha's opposing side. The village has just gone through a great upheaval and cannot withstand more turmoil. Do you want to force them into rebellion and provoke a Konoha civil war? Monkey, you are just too weak. If this continues, you will only harm Konoha. Danzo, you do not need to concern yourself with the village's internal affairs. I will investigate them. Send your root ninja out and see whether they can find any clues outside. Danzo was filled with anger, but in the end he held it in. Taking a step back, he said, fine. Just leave this matter to me. But for the reconstruction plan for the center of the village this time, I propose relocating the Uchiha clan to the outskirts, to keep them farther away from the Nine Tails. Agreed. Hamura and Kohara both voted in favor. Hiruzen said nothing, expressing tacit consent. Danzo was secretly delighted. Since he was unwilling to tear off the roof, opening a window first was acceptable too. He immediately raised another topic. How are the fourth Hokage and the Jinchuriki doing? Hiruzen did not hide anything. Their condition is not very good. Both of them suffered severe injuries, and the medical team believes they will need a long period of recuperation. Danzo felt that the opportunity had arrived. I said long ago that this young man Minato is unreliable. He simply does not possess the awareness required of a Kage. I propose removing him from the position of fourth Hokage and selecting someone else. Your disciple Orochimaru would be quite suitable. Suitable, my foot. I sent him to monitor you, yet he has already fallen to the point of fooling around with you. Where is the will of fire in his heart? The third Hokage immediately opposed it. Danzo, do you know what you are saying? Minato is the fourth Hokage of Konoha, recognized by all Konoha ninja and approved by the daimyo. If we remove him, do you want us to become the biggest joke in the entire shinobi world? But he is already unable to perform the duties of Hokage now. Are we supposed to simply wait for him to recover? How long will that take? The other ninja villages will not miss such an opportunity. I, the third Hokage, will temporarily act as Hokage. That is not something you need to concern yourself with. Danzo was almost laughing from anger. You can even do it like this? You already stepped down, and now you can just climb back up again? If you will not consider Orochimaru, could you not at least consider me? Hiruzen, you will regret this. Danzo, right now I am still the Hokage. Just go and complete the task I assigned to you. Danzo had nothing left to say. He slammed the door in anger and left. Koharu and Hamura were not nervous at all about the quarrel between the two old comrades. There was no helping it. After seeing it so many times, they had long since become numb. At the same time, this time they did not stand on Danzo's side either. Reselecting a Hokage was simply too outrageous. Minato had done a fairly good job. Now that he was injured, letting Hiruzen temporarily act as Hokage was acceptable as well. After serving as Hokage for decades, he did not need to familiarize himself with the work and could restore everything in Konoha to normal as quickly as possible. Danzo returned to the root base filled with anger and went straight to where Orochimaru was. Then he saw Orochimaru, completely absorbed in the laboratory and paying no attention at all to the Ninetales incident outside. His anger suddenly grew even greater. You really can keep your composure. The Ninetales came out outside, yet you still have the leisure to conduct experiments here. Orochimaru could not even be bothered to turn his head. In his signature hoarse voice, he said, "Hee, is this not exactly what you hoped to see? Besides, the matter has already been resolved. What would I go out for?" Danzo was not surprised at all that Orochimaru, holed up in the laboratory, could still learn about what was happening outside. This snake had many methods. Even now, there were still many ninja in the village who were absolutely loyal to him. Plenty of people were secretly passing intelligence to him. That brat Minato has temporarily withdrawn due to severe injuries. This is our opportunity. Do you have no thoughts at all about the position of Hokage? No. And, Danzo, do you really think Minato-kun has withdrawn because of severe injuries? What do you mean? Are you saying it's fake? Orochimaru had never thought much of Danzo. He only knew how to play some shady tricks and lacked the necessary sensitivity to normal responses that operated in the open. If he did not need Root's help to obtain resources for many forbidden experiments, he would not even bother speaking with him. You and I both know that, as Hokage, Minato-kun cannot fully control power. He is my sensei's puppet. Of course, my sensei would certainly not agree with that. But what he thinks is not important. What matters is what the reality is. I think that, with Minato-kun's intelligence, he must have already discovered the problem. What he is doing now is forcing my respected sensei to make a choice. How very interesting. After thinking about it carefully, Danzo realized it was indeed very possible. Why do these Hokage always have so many schemes? The methods they used were all things everyone understood, yet would not openly tear apart. Danzo could not use such methods. He was used to being direct. It seems I need to send someone to test the situation. There is no need. Doing that would have no meaning at all. And have you considered what consequences such a test would bring if my guess is correct? What would you use to deal with a Hokage, a Jinchuriki, and Higashino Makoto, a genius who, at 11 years old, can forcibly control the Ninetales and has also learned the Flying Thunder God technique? Danzo once again had nothing to say. What the hell would I use to deal with that? At this moment, Danzo felt completely broken inside. I'm such an idiot. I knew that Brat Makoto was a genius, but how could I have known he was this kind of genius? A genius who can solo the 9 tails before even turning 11. Have you ever seen something like that? If I had known earlier, who would have cared whether there was darkness in his heart or not? I should have used every method to pull him to my side. If I handle things badly, he could treat me and the entire route as if we were the 9 tails and wipe us out the same way. His heart ached. After thinking it over again and again, Danzo felt that the Uchiha were still easier targets. I will post some extra chapters in Patreon, you can check it out. Patreon.com/TitoViller. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Novels Wonderland.